Half of this stream is just checking out ripped dudes on Twitter.
Wow.
Yeah. What's wrong with that? Hello, Whispyr.
Hello.
Long time no talk. And James is here too. Wonderful. James, dude, it was such a struggle getting a hold of you today, but I realized I did not word my first message correctly.
Oh, yeah. I was a little surprised, but I am ready.
What are you? Yeah, it's always on the spot, just YOLO. What have you been doing, James? I saw you tried to play beta earlier, but you only streamed for an hour.
Oh, man. I had the worst morning of all time. So, all I wanted to do was get a nice, all my transmog from live and my mounts. So, I went to the old realms and I clicked copy account data.
Yeah.
And ever since then, I've not been able to log back. Well, I can log into beta and I can click like enter world on my character, but then the loading bar goes to full and then it just closes my WoW. And I've literally tried every single thing except for a full computer like system restore. Like I've uninstalled the beta.
Oh no!
I've done everything, and literally nothing works. So I'm not too sure about that.
Oh, that really sucks. Like actually, that like what do you even do?
I don't know. That's so I've been trying to figure it out all day, but I don't know.
Wait,
if
someone
there's
said the
anything I can
servers
do.
are down. Maybe they're doing like a restart. Maybe that'll fix you, or you broke the beta servers. One of the two. It's probably that
Maybe.
one.
Probably.
Okay, so I wanted to talk to you guys because I talked with James a while ago and kind of got a brief look at the trees. Actually, surprisingly enough, not a ton has changed. Rogue is probably one of the classes that got introduced really early, and then it didn't really receive a lot of iteration, and it was a really strong. This is my impression. It was a really strong tree when it first came out, and it just kind of got passed as the other trees got better. Like as time went on and on, more and more trees like learned things from other trees, and they were just way better pathed. They had way better layouts for the actual trees, and then like general things like all the 3-point nodes in the entire game have been removed, outside of a few trees that have not been looked at yet in that way. I think Rogue is certainly one of those that is going to get that in the future. So we're not going to like go too deep into like the pathing on them because like just that alone means a lot of things have to change, right? So not going to go too deep, but I feel like it started out really powerful, and just now it just seems like it's a little outdated because it just doesn't have that fresh coat of paint that a lot of the other specs do.
Yeah, do you want to take that one, Whispyr?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with everything you said. I mean, it's just that we're kind of just sitting there waiting for any iteration to happen, and improvements to happen. Right now, I know that the class tree changed. I'm gonna send a picture of what it was before, in case you want to show that.
Sure, I can show up side by side. Good.
But so the image is the before, and now you obviously see what happened after.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just objectively worse now. So they changed some pathing in the middle, and they moved around like Cold Blood, Vigor, Deeper Stratagem, Mark for Death. But it actually just made the problems that the tree already had just worse instead of fixing the problems. Which is, a little bit disappointing, but I think the class tree in general just needs a ton of work. Like it's not close.
Definitely. And it just like, I was showing this earlier. I'll actually use this other tab to kind of illustrate this. Is that if you like look at the way the rogue tree is set up, it looks similar to like the way the hunter tree was initially, which was like one of the first ones where it was just like a straight line. And now like this is how the pathing looks, and this is how the pathing looks. If you look at other trees that were released recently, like the priest class tree, this is kind of like the look that it has. It's like, there's like 1 and 2 point talents only, and then it's like very interconnected like this and woven through. A lot of the warlock trees look like this. Just kind of, they all have this look, and rogue is just one of the old ones where it still has 2 tropes that are only existing really in old trees, and that is that 3-point talents existing at all. I would not worry too much about this. I think Blizzard has basically done all but say this, but I think clearly all 3-point nodes will be gone by Dragonflight in every tree. It's just that Rogue hasn't had that optimization yet. They've taken them out of every other tree almost in the game. So like that will also like make things a little bit more accessible, because like right now it's kind of hard to like consider Thistletey and There's some other things in the tree that are like kind of inaccessible, and just in general, the pathing is just like super, super weird. That is something we're going to talk about in a bit. So I do want to kind of get into the class tree after. I just want to get a couple of your all's takes as rogues about just things that are coming to your class in Dragonflight that are, you know, kind of controversial, but also I think kind of nice. Like, you know, a lot of classes in the game have something that in an optimal scenario puts one of them in the raid. I think you guys got that with a trophic poison. So I'm going to start with a trophic. Just like, what are your all's opinion on this? Obviously, one major thing from how it was before to how it is now is they actually put this in the class tree, which in my opinion was huge. But what is your all's opinion on a trophic?
I think it's awesome. And like, for me personally, feeling like a little helpless at times, I guess, in raid, that I don't have something I could contribute before versus now, like, you know, if I see a mechanic coming up and then, you know I got my poison on there and I can shiv to make it even better. Like, that feels really good from a rogue perspective, I think. So I'm really thankful that they added that. The only thing that I noticed was with the current pathing of the tree now, like, I'm almost positive that you would take the improved poison, like that one, especially for raid, because it's going to make a trophic poison 0.6% stronger. But I really noticed that, like, it took away my ability to talent some stuff further down the tree that, like, I wanted to for damage. So that felt like a little bad.
I would not. I know it's like it's bad, and like there's two ways to look at trees and just things in the game, and one of them is much like me, where it's you're thinking about the way things should be or could be, and it's always big picture and way less how it is now. Like, when I'm looking at these trees and it's like, oh, you can't really get to this talent or the pathing's bad, I bet in X amount of weeks, I don't know how long it'll take, I think this is going to look totally different. Like, I don't think it's going to look anything like this based on what has happened to other classes that have had older trees. I think Druid is next. I think Rogue is shortly after. So I would not worry about that too much at all. I just more about the, you know, what this means for rogues going forward. I actually think the numbing, we can actually talk about numbing and a trophic as well. One thing that I think is really cool is this is actually one of the only cases in WoW currently where if you add the second of a class, you actually gain something else. So numbing, they removed weakness from warlocks, as far as I am aware. So the only thing that exists in the game that does what numbing poison does is actually given to all specs of DKs. They apply a stacking debuff on a target that reduces their attack speed by 20%, I believe. But just like weakness, that'll stack, assuming with numbing poison. So even though in a lot of raid encounters, I don't know about Mythic Plus or PvP, but in a lot of raid encounters, a trophic poison is absolutely something that you have to have. And numbing poison is like, if you end up bringing a second rogue, you're not just bringing them for the damage. You're also kind of bringing like a little extra thing that can be valuable.
Yeah, to my knowledge, numbing poison was actually pretty good on Sire. I know, like, you guys didn't play any rogues in the race and stuff, but in like P3, it helped a lot for tanks. I'm not too sure if there's any other major bosses, but yeah, it definitely can be helpful. It's a good one to have. That's what we use most of the time right now in M+. Not sure if it will stay that way or not.
I don't know if a trophic poison is going to have a lot of applications in Mythic Plus. Like, if you're only bringing one rogue, which is really likely, I could see both having, like, it's kind of a hard decision.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about a dungeon maybe like Grimrail Depot and that first boss when he does that big slam, like, if you were able to shiv that slam with the trophic poison, like, that would be really big, right? But for other dungeons where you don't have that big hit of damage, I could definitely see you playing Mind Numbing.
Well, let's talk about shiv. So one thing is that Master Poisoner allows a trophic to be a little bit more powerful. And then at least previously, Shiv would double that to make this a 7% reduction. I have a take about that, but I'm interested in what you guys think about that even existing.
So they actually got rid of that.
Oh, good.
So that's not a thing. And so a trophic at most is the 3.6 that just passively, which does take away the agency of like, oh, well, I see a big mechanic coming, I'm gonna Shiv. That gameplay doesn't exist. It's just sort of a passive reduction now. But the thing about a trophic also is that a lot of fights are also environmental.
Oh, yeah.
So while there are a lot of boss mechanics that are like, oh, well, it does a big ass slam or a big roar, you know, like, that's big damage. There's also a lot of just environmental stuff, ground effects, like rocks falling from the sky, that sort of stuff, and you can't poison those. So a trophic does nothing for those things.
Okay, so this is true. But I'll actually use an example from this expansion. So the boss this expansion that shit on you the most and was mostly environmental damage. Actually, I'll split this into two parts. So you said that Shiv doesn't work. That's great, because I think the other specs using Shiv and like talenting into it to just use it as an on-use, like Outlaw or Sub, that's fine. But I think Assassination having to ever think about once using either of their charges of Shiv for a DR is super lame. So I just am really glad that, I'm sure you both agree. I'm glad that's not in the game. However, let's use Sludge Fist, right? So the dot on Sludge Fist was most of the damage you took in the encounter, and that was environmental purely, so this would not have worked on that. And him charging into the pillar and exploding was environmental, and it did not do any damage to you. That was, I think, total, like 80% of the damage in the fight was purely environmental. But this atrophic poison would have been fucking insane on that fight. The best example of a fight, and it's not tank damage at all. Literally just having a 3.6% damage reduction on the roars coming from the boss, on a boss that's mostly environmental, would have still saved so many deaths when you're doing that boss in Mythic early on, where every single thing almost killed you. Because it's not necessarily, things that kill you in a raid are not necessarily the overall damage or the dot that's doing 80% of the damage in the fight. It's combining that with lethal damage events, and reducing those singular lethal damage events by 3.5% would be fucking crazy. So, and that's the worst case scenario. Like, a boss like that is the worst case scenario for atrophic poison. Most fights that try to kill you, almost exclusively the damage that is killing you is assigned to bosses. So, I mean, this is as required in a raid as Paladins with Devotion Aura. 100%.
Oh, yeah, I 100% agree. But I just wanted to get that out there for people who are like, oh, big, it's just, the whole raid takes 3.5% less damage. I mean, it's not really how that works, but it is still strong for, like you said, those moments where, you know, those hits that can be reduced, that's the big survivability. So, yeah, I think atrophic is just crazy. I know that Curse of Weakness is gone. I don't know if we've had like an actual confirmation of like, hey, this is just not in, but I think that is just actually gone, right?
As far as I know, it's already it's weird because there are a few things that aren't working on beta. Like, for example, with how bugged Rogue has been, if even the Shiv thing, I hope the Shiv thing's gone, but I could absolutely see that just being a beta bug and it actually is supposed to work, and just who knows, because so many other abilities aren't working at the moment, unless they've specifically posted like, we don't want Shiv to work on this, right? So yeah, I believe Curse of Weakness is gone. I don't know if we have like they've stated we want weakness out of the game, because what they could be thinking is, you know, we want Warlocks already have an automatic guaranteed spot at all times. They just have too much utility and things that are required to have from them. So maybe they're thinking we don't also want them to bring weakness. So like, they could have just seen, I mean, what they did is they basically gave weakness to DKs, and they can maybe see that as a way to like give DKs a class without a spot potentially having a spot.
Yeah. It's just weird because now numbing is a decision. And like, numbing always stacked with Curse of Weakness, but it was kind of in the shadows, because why would you bring numbing if you already have Curse of Weakness and it's just weaker? So numbing is sort of like an odd one out, but now without Curse of Weakness, I think that numbing is actually kind of super underrated, but it also doesn't work on things like Sylvanas. Like, numbing did nothing on Sylvanas. It's just an auto pick atrophic forever, which is a little disappointing in my opinion, because it does have like I think that the decision to make between attack speed slow and just damage reduction might be an interesting decision, but it's just the fight design mixed with how strong each one is just doesn't make sense for the choice node, really.
I actually, dude, I'm on the opposite edge. I actually really like it. Like, I feel like it bringing more rogues just has value where it initially wouldn't. I feel
Amen.
Like, yeah, I mean, and that's not coming from like a biased rogue perspective. I don't give a shit about rogues, honestly. It's just like, I wish more classes had things like that where it's like, okay, they have like a little bit of benefit of stacking them. So I'm not really opposed to that. I think it's fine. It's also the only other source in the entire game where you can get any kind of attack speed reduction, which I think is definitely not nothing. It's not the strength of a trophic, but it's you know, the ability to bring it to a raid. And then the other thing about that was big one. I have a lot of takes about this for sure. I want to know what you guys think about Restless Crew Outlaw buff. Oh, actually, before we get into Restless Crew, because this is kind of relevant to it, is atrophic used to be on the Assassination tree, and I'm so glad that they put this in the class tree because, like I said, with how required this is something where if you were a rogue in a raiding guild and you were trying to be optimal, of course, not talking about guilds that were, just play for fun and all that stuff, you would have always brought an Assassination Rogue first, regardless of the tuning. And then if Restless Crew is really powerful, that would have been the second thing you would have brought, meaning that if Sub Rogue was the, third best or even the highest simming rogue spec, it would always be like the third rogue in your raid, potentially, right? And that's like super fucking weird. But I feel like they still kind of have this issue where if Restless Crew, which I'll give you guys some space to talk about it, exists, you can bring Restless Crew and a Trophic with the same class, right? So seems kind of weird.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tricky one, because if you read it as the tooltip states, like Restless Crew sounds insane. And whether or not they let it go live like that, or... I mean, yeah, it's doubtful, right? Because basically it reads like it's giving 20 seconds of CDR every minute, approximately, based on like the rate at which you spend comma points, which sounds like a lot.
There's
like,
absolutely no way in hell that goes live like that. It's going to be a fifth of that at most if it's giving it to 4 other people, and there's no way it'll stack. Go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say the other thing that is a little bit weird about it is if you have some sort of buff like that, I feel like I would prefer it to be more centralized, higher on the tree. So, because basically, like, it just seems a little bit out of place. Like, look where they positioned the Trophic, right? It's very accessible no matter which side of the tree you want to go down. It's very early on. And, like, this seems like something that you're always going to want, no matter if you're playing for AoE on Outlaw or single target or what the tuning ends up being on the specific abilities and where you want to end up going. So I feel like they would want to consider positioning it higher up, but it's also not the biggest deal because the Count the Odds conduit is pretty good. That's above that, so I don't know, just something I was thinking about the other day. Because there's a lot of talents, especially on the Outlaw tree, that like I feel like in a progression environment you definitely would want to take. Like, for example, Outlaw is significantly tankier than it used to be because Outlaw gets plus 10% stamina that no other class gets. It also gets CDR on Feint and on Evasion, so you can always have Feint up, and your Evasion is like a very low cooldown. And there's a talent in the Rogue class tree, which makes it so you can Evasion. When you Evasion, you take 10% less damage. So you can basically Evasion magic damage. You can Evasion things that you normally wouldn't be able to dodge. And your Feint makes you take 20% less damage. So basically what I'm saying is, if you're investing all of these points into damage reduction, which would be like really good in a progression environment, then you're not going to have that much left over if you have to go way down the tree to get a Restless Crew. And left over for damage, if that makes sense.
Kinda, yeah. I mean, who knows how that's gonna actually play out? Because I feel like if you look at the pathing of like Outlaw, and I think there's way less issues with the spec trees as there are in general with the class tree, right? So I feel like the spec trees might not get a ton of work, but I don't know if the defensiveness really matters as much for Rogue. So it's great that you have that, but it's like really tanky classes getting more tanky. When in reality, when you're like living a giant damage event, if your Rogue is dead and your Rogue needs to spec into more defensiveness, so many other people are also already dead. So it's kind of like points that don't really matter unless you're talking about like soloing some kind of mechanic, right? So I'm not super worried about that. I know some. I wonder, Whispyr, if you have any Restless Crew takes.
I do have Restless Crew takes, but I need to tread carefully because if I don't watch my words, the Outlaw gang is going to roll up on my street.
Okay.
But I think that Restless Crew, it has the potential to either be something that is really impactful, and like there's always the question of like, oh well, if it reduces stuff, like Fairy, you might get an extra cast, but the real gain is that you have a timing difference, right? Like you reduce a cooldown, so now it's on a different timer, and that might line up with something. That's really interesting in theory, but it could also create a lot of problems in terms of the general power level that Outlaw brings. Like obviously right now it's way too much and it reduces it by way too much. Like 20 seconds every minute is insane. But if it's say 10 seconds, right, for everyone every minute, or even 5 seconds, that's not going to be impactful enough to actually do much.
Correct.
And so that sort of completely invalidates the entire talent to begin with. Like, it's either too strong to the point where you get something out of it, and then Outlaw, if it's tuned equal, just in terms of damage, it just brings something that the other specs don't, and it's like Wind Fury levels of good. Or it's just, it can't be that strong, and so the talent is just kind of dead, and people are like, oh, well, my combustion's back 3 seconds earlier. Haha, whoop-de-doo.
See, that's the thing, though. So I actually like that you touched on both, because you're right, and this will never go live like this with this number. And if they they make it to where you're making it like the power level of Night Fae Fairies right now, but just split amongst 4 people, not they're all getting Night Fae Fairies, but that power level is just split amongst 4 people. It would be in a case on a fight where like there's a burn that has to happen at 1 minute and 50 seconds, and if you put a 2 minute strong 2 minute class in an Outlaw Rogues group, even though it won't reduce your trinket that you may stack with it, like you would have that CD up for that time, and that's like really high level min-max thinking that will get you that. But most of the time what it's going to be is given to one of the few classes in the game where slightly reducing their CDs can actually give you full benefit. So like previous expansions, Demo Lock, not really Demo Lock now because they rotate more on like a 1.5 minute thing and they burst every 3. They would have to get it down to 1 minute, so 30 seconds and 1.5 minutes, and I just think there's no way they will get it to that power level. So it's basically just like Kindling Fire Mage, and then like the Hunter version of Kindling they just got with the shorter cooldown True Shot, where if they're just hitting that on cooldown, it's just going to always give them a little bit more damage, and it's not really as important with timings. But I think that's like super boring too, that if it's just like, you know, if you're bringing one rogue for a trophic, you could also make them an outlaw, and then for whatever mages and hunters are in your group, you just or evokers dragon rage as well, or enhanced dogs or whatever. There's a few classes. It's like you just always bring one of them so they're a little bit stronger, but the power level of that isn't super high. So I think there's a reason this hasn't been implemented. There's a lot of things for Rogue that haven't been implemented, but this specifically, the reason this has never touched the game is I don't think it ever will. I think this is going to get removed.
Yeah, I think it's just too difficult to like play around and like try to design and balance it in order to make it into a healthy spot in the game. And then like, who knows, like down the line you might have a tier set or something that reduces the cooldown, and then you're like, okay, well, Restless Crew's back on the menu, and now it's just bonkers again. So it's really difficult to get it into a spot that's just long-term healthy.
I also think
I think they know that.
Yeah, and I think like Blizzard is kind of fighting with this in general in the game, is like, if you need to bring one of a class, which is like they're pretty close to making that for every class, a lot of the specs aren't the same. You know, this is natural in like healing specs, where like in Paladin, for example, Holy Paladin is just bringing the same thing to a raid that Prot and Red are, but they're just naturally bringing that extra talent and Devotion Aura for free, like Prot does, and they're also making their Devotion Aura into a cooldown with Aura Mastery, and they have Summer. It's just like more value. A Disc Priest is bringing Barrier with Fort, and the other two just aren't. Right? Like, Rogue is kind of like that, where initially there was going to be a huge issue with this, with a Trophic not being in the class tree, but now it's like, if this is even remotely good, it's just always going to cause the same problem Assassination or Trophic Poison did, which is it's just always the first Rogue in the raid, and I don't think any Rogue player wants to be shoehorned into always playing one spec because of some interaction like that, and not because their spec is good for a fight or because they like another spec, right?
Also, it's just not your damage, right? That's like another thing that just feels bad, where it's like, yeah, I'm bringing utility, but also it's not my meter. And even though that's a perception thing, and like, oh, well, I'm a team player, whatever, at the end of the day, you're still looking at the meter and you're like, well, at least I have Wind Fury, at least I have Restless Crew, and that's just not a thing that's, for the majority of players, gonna end up being a positive experience.
True. There's another thing that was added, and I just want one more take on this before we really start digging into the issues that the class tree has. Whenever this came out, it seemed like they wanted to give all 3 rogue specs a raid buff. Restless Cruise for Outlaw, Trophic Poison was for Assassination, and then they gave Sub this like weird tangent node that made it look like they wanted Shroud of Concealment to be like Stampeding Roar. Now this is, I think, been clarified by the rogue class tree dude, basically saying this was never actually intended to work in combat if you were to find a way to use this in the middle of a fight, because everyone else will be in combat and they won't get the increased movement speed. It was basically just seen as like Mythic Plus tech, where if you're using a Shroud of Concealment to skip something, it'll naturally just like roar them. It can be like a nice single point for utility. This is something that I find strange that it's only for Sub, other than obviously the class fantasy of Sub stealthing more. But This seems like something that should absolutely be class tree like, and something available to all specs, and especially because like you definitely mixing utility into class tree or spec tree with all the damage in it. I don't know. That's always a weird argument for most specs in the game. And I just wonder what you guys think about the placement of this and the power level of this.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead.
assuming that you can't use it in combat, which would have been the coolest use for it, so that basically leaves M+. I don't think, 9 out of 10 shroud skips, you would not need that. Maybe 99 out of 100. I can't really think of a shroud skip where you need everyone to have insane movement for all 15 seconds of the shroud just to barely make it past the final mob. So it's almost to the point where even if it were in the class tree, I don't even know if anyone would ever take this. It maybe would be a leveling talent, so you could shroud quickly inside of a cave where you wouldn't be able to mount or something. I don't know. Because, yeah, I just don't see a world where you would pick this over a damage point if you aren't able to use it in combat.
Well, I think also you guys have a very assuming this is on the class tree, you guys have a very damage focused class tree to where utility kind of feels bad, kind of an issue with the tree. A lot of the better trees in the game don't actually do that. You have a lot of utility points you can spend in your class tree. This just seems like the perfect thing for a rogue. I would actually wish that this was a perfect opportunity to kind of give rogues a roar in a way. I think that would be sick if they made it work like that. And also, it would be cool if your class tree even really allowed that. But I mean, if you put this in your class tree at any point and you didn't have to path through it, you would just be like, why am I not getting a damage with this talent point? And I think you're going to run into that with the spec tree as well. So it's kind of just like a missed opportunity, a missed idea. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Put it in place of improved sap. Done.
Yeah, improved sap is... That's something. But yeah, the other thing too is it is kind of a big advantage for sub because the other specs, if they wanted to be able to use it in combat, they would have to save a vanish for it, which would be a little bit clunky from a game.
Oh yeah, that's turbo bad. Anyone assuming that they think it would be a good idea for someone to vanish or shadow dance to use shroud, and that's what you would no one would ever fucking do that. It would just be a nice potential benefit to make that ability more relevant. But yeah, okay. Sounds like you guys have, or do you have any more takes about this specifically?
Nope, it's just dog shit.
Yeah. That's the thing though, having a talent on the tree that's dog shit is bad. This clearly has potential to be more than that and actually worth a talent point, but is absolutely not in its place in the tree, and also randomly only applies to one spec, which I feel like this is definitely something where that other iteration would apply to all three. All right, so let's dig into the class tree. We're going to start with Assassination as the idea, but we're probably not going to fully rebuild the tree for sub, Assassination, and Outlaw. We'll probably just talk about just what small changes happen for each one. I imagine the beginning is largely the same for all three specs, and it's kind of just going to be what's selected at the end. Don't spend too much. Let's talk about the ones you're going through, and you'll do it one at a time. And then that way we'll be able to kind of see the bad pathing as they exist. I'm sure we'll get through improved sap. We will have time to talk about that. You don't have to do it all at once. When you pass something that you want to give an opinion on, that's absolutely fine. The only thing I ask of you guys is that when we get to 8, generally, I like you to move on. Even if for whatever reason you pick 10 points before the first thing. I don't know if you do or not, or if you pick 23 points before the bottom thing. What you always want to do is, whenever you can, stop when you get to 20, continue on downward, and then if you're only going to take 5 or 6 points in the capstone level, whatever, but then just go back up and talk about the choice you have at that point, so it can kind of make the trees make a little more sense. And just as a disclaimer before we start this, everyone in this call and in the stream should be aware that clearly this tree is going to be majorly changed, not just in its pathing most likely, because it's a very outdated style of pathing for these trees that they've made, but also they do have multiple 3-point nodes which have universally been removed from every tree. So these nodes are already 2-pointers, or they're moved, or whatever, and that just hasn't happened yet. So it will be different eventually, but just going to talk about the issues now because there hasn't been rogue changes in a while, and a big reason why we're doing this today is to kind of give that final full set of feedback to where they can have more information when making those changes, especially because the person who's been mostly involved with this tree is someone who's very often in this chat and conversing with us about these changes. All right, let's fucking get it. James did this last time, and he did all 3. So I'm gonna have Whispyr do Assassination and Sub, and James, you're gonna do Outlaw as far as the spec tree and the class tree variants. And don't link me a picture. I'm not looking at that. Just use my stream that I'm sharing right now, and you'll just tell me which point to take and in what order for most content, and then you can, either one of you can freely speak about anything the other one is choosing.
Okay. So, it's actually fairly simple. It's always a pick a path. So let's start with the class tree and just take evasion.
Oh yeah, we're gonna do the spec tree separately
spec
after
tree
this. No. We're gonna do the spec. We're going to do all three. Like, we're gonna completely do the class tree for all three specs, and then do each spec tree individually afterwards.
Okay.
So just the class tree.
So for assassination, we already get shiv. So let's go and take evasion. And then obviously a trophic and master poisoner are must flicks because they're just so strong.
Okay.
Now you want your required sort of defensives. So you're gonna take blind, feint, sap, and cloak. And now you kind of have one more point. You can put it wherever. Gouge, tricks, depends on which path you're going to take. I'm going to take tricks because I want to go down the right.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right there. So far, I think again, this is going to get changed, but I don't really like a few things in the top of this tree. So there are a lot of scenarios as a rogue where you want evasion, especially if they're giving you a DR component to it. But there's a lot of other classes, even some that are really similar to Rogue, that have actually pretty bad trees, but they do have some fundamental things that have been true across the entire game, which is paralysis is used in PvP, Mythic Plus, and raiding about the same as blind. They're very similar abilities. And what a lot of other trees have is when they have those CC spells that are often taken but often not, one of the cool things that class trees have allowed you to do is they've allowed you to, gain points in other areas that you wouldn't normally have to make yourself stronger on a fight that doesn't have a need for blind or paralyzed. And rogues kind of don't have that. Like, rogues, you're going to always want feint, right? You're going to always want cloak. But, like, having to get blind, something that's turbo situational in PvE, to get feint just feels like a wasted point. That was just something I wanted to point out before moving by it.
The same thing with sap as well, and that's sort of a problem with that. We have a lot of sort of bloat in our utility with stuff that exists, but you don't really want to take. But it's just there, and you kind of have to path through it in order to get the stuff that you do want. But anyways, continuing with the tree, we're going to go down the left side first. The left side is very poison heavy, so we're just going to take everything on the left side all the way to the gate. So deaden nerve.
Let's see what some of this stuff is. Okay, crit on generators, physical damage reduction, movement speed. Oh, see that? Yeah, this is fine. It's just like if you look at the placement of things like this in other trees, it's like you can kind of path into it and choose it if you want to. Like, you don't have to like go down in it. Like, the whole straight line bit with no connections feels ridiculous. Like, this is
like if you look at the first 10 points, used to it. Yeah, if you look at the first 10 points spent, like, at least 5 of them are stuff that you don't even necessarily need. You just, it feels bad.
Which is okay, like, but you see that more, that's something that's really bad in class trees. And spec trees, they do this a lot, and it makes sense, because, like, if you look at Monk, for example, they can't make Flying Serpent Kick baseline for Windwalker. That doesn't exist. It's baseline for all 3 specs, or it's not. So what they do with a lot of early points in spec trees is they clearly make you, if they always want you to have Flying Serpent Kick as a Windwalker, basically making it baseline for that spec but not the class, they just put it in a required spot. So if you wanted in this tree to get Storm, Earth, and Fire and Serenity, which you will always want, you will always have Flying Serpent Kick. This is an excellent position, and they are forcing you to take something in quotes you don't always need, but this is something that you want all the time, and it would be weird to have to choose it. And previously, in a previous iteration, you didn't choose it because it just wasn't as good as the other points. So, like, Rogue is kind of like that as well. So it's possible that you see stuff that, like, they want you to have and they'll make you take it, but you never want to see that in the class tree. That's fine in the spec tree, but I think in the class tree it always feels bad, and specifically this line just looks ridiculous because, like, at least if you didn't want to take this and most other trees, you could path to, like, whatever would be in this invisible spot and then right down to deadly precision or something for something more important. Just a lot of the choices feel really bad.
Yeah, and I actually want to sort of highlight that once we get to the end. We're also going to take that dead end 0 of 1. It's just poison damage.
Got it.
Free damage, cool. And now we're just going to go down the right side, straight line again, because that's how it works.
All right, do you want to stop and talk about improved sap?
Yeah, so improved sap is just a pain. Why does it exist? It's so worthless. We already don't use sap. You need to be in stealth to use sap. It's like a Mythic Plus thing where it's like, hey, this pack is really dangerous. Sap one of the mobs. and then you just run up, sap it, and that's the end of it. That's why you use sap. It's also a PvP thing, but the energy cost is so dumb. And actually, if you pull up the Outlaw tree real quick,
Sure.
I want to show you some real funny shit. If you go to the right side of the Outlaw tree, there's dirty tricks.
Okay.
Cheap shot, gouge, and sap no longer cost energy. Like, why is it twice? And then if you go back to the class tree next to feint, if you go down the bottom right, rushed setup exists, and that also reduces the cost of sap.
Wait, where is the rushed setup?
It's
right here. Yeah, I see.
So that reduces it by 20%. Then you have a sap reduction of 100%, and then in the Outlaw tree you have sap costs no energy. And it's just, I will never understand for the life of me why that's a thing.
Dude, that's actually insane. I only knew about improved sap. That's just like actual incompetence. Like that, the fact that could ever happen. That's not even like, this tree needs a lot of work. All right, let's continue, but also just something like improved sap or things like these are fine. Obviously, having 3 of the same thing is pretty ridiculous, or things that like are not dependent on each other but do the same thing. Like improved sap is whatever if you want it on your talent tree, but it's the exact kind of thing where it should be like improved wound poison or subterfuge or just something off of sap where it doesn't lead anywhere else and it's 1 point off of the thing that it is related to. The fact that it's in between Shadow Step and energy cost of finishing reduction or Night Stalker and improved ambush, how does that even remotely make sense? It's ridiculous. So I think this will be one of the first things removed when they re-look at this tree.
God, I hope so. So we're going to continue down the path. Take Tight Spender, Deeper Strat. And then now we have 1 point left. And the only damage points is the Choice Node. You can kind of pick whatever you want. Improved Ambush is probably better.
Yeah. See, this just looks ridiculous. But, okay, yeah. I mean, you're just like, even if you wanted to consider something like So Versatile or Acrobatic Strikes, which would actually be really nice for non-Outlaw specs, like, it's just inaccessible. Like, that's a big problem.
The middle path is especially funny because if you look at Echoing Reprimand, and you're like, I want Echoing Reprimand, it's a capstone. Well, how do you get to Echoing Reprimand? You have to take Elusiveness, you have to take Acro, you have to take So Versatile, you have to take Recuperator, you have to take the Sprint, and now you're looking at the top 3 rows, and you probably want Gouge at least, because the other 2 are kind of worthless, and you want Feint, and in order to get Feint, you have to get Blind.
It is an 8-point investment to get Echoing Reprimand off of a proper build, and that's not including the fact that those 8 points you're removing you're comparing these 3 things. You're comparing Shadow Step, Tight Spender, and Deeper Stratagem with Recuperator, Flat Verse, and Acrobatic Strikes. So you're just basically making people not only have to choose an 8-point investment to get an ability, but you're also making them remove damage for health, regen, and defensiveness, basically, and just some extra utility of hitting farther, which is like no one ever wants to make that decision, right? It's really bad.
Yeah, the middle row is in shambles right now. After they changed the class tree and they moved the improved ambush into that choice node, the middle tree is just actually, why would you ever do it?
One thing I'd like to say here also is I personally do not like the fact that all 3 specs get access to Acrobatic Strikes. Like, I feel like that is part of Outlaw's identity, and I wouldn't even want to play an Assassination or a sub where you're, like, standing out. Like, it just doesn't feel correct from a class fantasy standpoint, and God, I don't know. Maybe I'm alone in that, but I feel like it belongs to Outlaw, and I don't know. It's
I completely
quite the
disagree with
investment.
that. I
Really?
think I completely. I mean, I'm not an Outlaw main, and I try to look at things objectively from all perspectives. Like, one of the things that class trees have done is they've given tools that other specs have had to the other specs, and it's kind of been an interesting change. I don't think this is a bad thing to add at all. In fact, I think Outlaw can still go from farther with a few talent points that they have access to in their spec tree, right?
Yeah, they could, yeah. I guess in my head it's because in order to hit something with a dagger, you would need to be close to it, versus a sword, you could hit it from farther away.
Bro, you are an actual LARPer.
Yeah,
you LARP.
I actually agree with PVC. I think longer blade mean longer arm. That makes sense to my monkey brain. So the logic checks out.
All right, yeah. I mean, if you guys both agree, I will retreat my stance. I don't think this is bad at all, but that is
No,
perfectly
I actually think that he's insane.
Yeah,
Acro is so good.
Yeah. Okay. Also, I do want to do a two things. So when we fill out the bottom of this tree, I want you guys to pretend that lethality and alacrity are 2 points. Because one thing that will 100% change is that these will not be 3-point nodes. They'll also probably be in a different spot, so it's kind of weird. But we don't need to make the argument by using all 3 of those points to be like, hey, 3-point nodes kind of suck, because obviously every tree 3-pointers suck. That's why they removed all of them. So these will be gone. So we'll do that. So you now have 11 points to fill out the bottom of this tree, and I definitely want to hear your takes on more than a few of these buttons. So we'll kind of just go wherever you want.
Yeah, so it's good that you said alacrity is 2 points, because we take 2 points in alacrity anyways, because the third point doesn't do anything.
Oh, yeah, I see that. It actually, because you have deeper stratagem, it literally does nothing. I see.
Yeah, it's just a higher chance, but you can already maintain the buff fully at 2 combo points. At 2 points in the talent, so the third point actually just worthless.
Amen.
Cheat death is cheat death. We love that.
Yep, say less.
And then find weakness doesn't do shit for assassination, but we have to take it to get find weakness.
Or to get shadow dance.
Yeah, to get shadow dance.
So let's before we go any further, what do you guys think about the thing they chose to give from one spec to all of the specs of Rogue being shadow dance? How do you guys think that plays?
Nope.
I think it's just a bit oppressive in the sense that, like, I don't see how Thistlethy and Echoing Reprimand are going to ever compare to how good Dance would be. Like, you would need some insane capstone talents on the, like, Thistlethy would need to restore like 1,000 energy. I don't know.
Yeah,
obviously,
Shadow
that wouldn't actually
Dance.
do anything, but
Shadow Dance is super weird.
Yeah, I don't think it feels good. Now, maybe this is going back to my LARP thing, but, like, to be a poison and bleed based spec, and then you've got this thing of shadow dance coming into play. I don't know. It's a bit, I don't know.
When I initially saw this, I thought it was really cool because I was thinking of like the shadow dance outlaw, like roll the bones, keep it rolling, whatever synergy, and I was like, damn, that sounds fucking sick. But I think it like complicates a lot of things, and it doesn't seem like. This doesn't seem good. Also, the capstone level of this is super weird. So a lot of classes, capstone level doesn't really make sense yet, and a big reason for that is this is all theory. Like, how the designs right now is only about design. Like, the class trees are only about design. It's not about tuning. There's a lot of capstone things that don't make sense to one another because the process of tuning things within the level they're supposed to be tuned at has not happened yet for, like, I think 9 out of the 12 classes. It hasn't even begun. So I wouldn't worry too much about like the comparing 2 different abilities because that entire process, to my knowledge, has not begun yet for Rogue because obviously look at how much work needs to be done on just the tree itself. But yeah, something to think about. I just thought Shadow Dance didn't really fit. Like I feel like it was just Sub's thing and it made sense of it being Sub's thing. But yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a bit weird to press Ambush as Assassination. Like I feel like the spec identity is so much in Mutilate as your generator that I don't know. Because you basically press it in the opener, and you sometimes press it every 2 minutes, and
Blindside exists, and I think Blindside has a definite space.
Although, that is a really cool talent, but like you played that for a few months in Sanctum, right? And then you haven't really played it at all since then, and Assassination wasn't too great in Castle Nathria. So
well, I mean, like even then, like it's at least it has some ambush use in its tree, so it has some stuff. All right, let's move on to the other side. So you guys have 5 points. Like there's imagine Echoing Reprimand. Literally just like the fucking insane commit to go get that spell. So, I mean, are you guys even considering Thistlethy? It seems so weak.
No, we're not considering it all. The last 5 points are 2 into lethality, leeching poison, and then seal fate.
Yeah, this is doomed.
Yeah. Like a cold blood seems like such a cool ability, right? Same with Mark for Death. Like I love Mark for Death. Like that is so fun to me, and like it's just not worth. Like I don't know.
Yeah. So Mark for Death is actually kind of cool. I agree. But the points don't exist to get it alongside all the other stuff that we want. Cold blood, if it doesn't buff bleeds, like if you can't cold blood into a rupture. Or cold blood into like a Vanish Garrote, if that's not a thing you can do, then Cold Blood is actually just a dog shit talent.
Yep.
It's like negative DPS.
Yeah, especially with it being a 45-second cooldown, the only way to like make it better would be to increase the critical strike. If it didn't work on a dot, would be to increase the critical strike chance and damage by 100%. That would just be like give you like a giga insane target swapping in Venom or something. But that doesn't seem like it works. At least it's better than the old tree though, because you linked this earlier. I want to bring this up. In the old tree, to path down to the bottom, the Echoing Reprimand thing still generally existed, but you had to go down and get Marked for Death, and you had to go down and get Cold Blood. And I think that would have been a situation where that would have turned off so many rogue players. Marked for Death is sick and super fun to play, but there's a lot of rogues that do not want to play with that shit, especially all the time, forever, right?
It's me. I'm that rogue.
I think it's a lot of rogues.
Fair enough.
I think a lot of rogues just see Mark for Death as just like this niche thing you use in a scenario, and it's just not something you always do. Also, did they nerf Alacrity or change Alacrity?
The tooltip on Alacrity and Dashing Scoundrel have both been just really, really weird, and they've gotten just crazy ass changes for no reason, and it isn't reflected in game. So I don't really know what's happening with that.
Yeah, it's the same in game on beta. At least when I was playing last night.
Yeah, but like dashing is 15 energy on a poison crit now at 3 points.
Yeah, I saw that.
According to the tooltip, I don't know.
That's a lot of energy.
So let's talk about some of the other points here that are really restrictive, and I want to kind of actually wait before we do that. Maybe we actually first of all, James, does this massively change for Outlaw?
No, not particularly. The only thing you might consider is, I mean, versatility is very good for Outlaw, and also Gouge. Like, you don't really need Gouge for a raid scenario, but it is really, really good in M+. So I probably would take points out of... I mean, it's so tough to say. You would probably take a point out of the improved ambush, I think. And Master Poisoner, right? You don't want Master Poisoner... Or, sorry, the improved poisons. That's down. Or virulent poisons. Yeah.
Okay.
Because that's a big assassination one. And then I would just go up through the 4% verse, probably. Maybe the acro strikes if you have the point for it there.
Well, I can just go ahead and fill out everything else. You can basically not get Alacrity or Lethality, or get out of Seal Fate or something like that.
I would probably just for flexibility take one out of whichever is worse, Lethality or Seal Fate, and then put that in... actually, you would need to drop both Seal Fate. Man, now I'm thinking about it, like, Seal Fate's really good because Outlaw Rogue crits all the time. And so to, like, have an extra combo point that you're generating means you're pumping out much more damage. I mean, you might just have to get used to playing without the long arm.
James, did you say you had notes for this shit, bud?
Well, yeah, but...
No shot you had notes.
No, I okay, but it's a tricky subject here because I mean, Outlaws... The problem is like, basically what I would say is I personally don't care how it plays. I would just pick whichever one does more damage. So you have like 5 options. Do you want Alacrity for some haste? Do you want Lethality for some crit? Do you want Seal Fate for some more combo points? Like, do you want Vigor for some more energy? I personally don't I don't care at all. I'm just going to pick the one that does the most damage. So that's kind of the difference, I guess. Whereas, like, Seal Fate is particularly good for Assassination. Like, really, really good.
Yeah, this is the one thing that I just copied your, like, sample Outlaw you made. And this is basically, I'm assuming you took Elusiveness, because most scenarios you'll take that, but you opted out of Leeching into Seal Fate. You don't have the second point in Lethality. You did 1 in Alacrity, 1 in Lethality, and then kept Master Poisoner. But obviously a few of those things can be swapped around for...
yeah, and you could drop Elusiveness too, like, if you weren't...
But dude, like, think about Elusiveness. Like, Elusiveness, why is this just all the way down this line? Like,
yeah. It should be, like, up towards the top by next to Faint.
Well, I mean, okay, up towards the top is weird because, like, generally speaking, you want the power level of these points to flush out down through the tree to where the more powerful stuff is at the bottom and the not as powerful. Like, Elusiveness is definitely super good, but that's just, you know, one of those things where mixing the capstone level with defensive abilities and offensive is always super weird unless you guarantee the defensive ones on the way in, which I guess you kind of do with Elusiveness. So the bigger issue here isn't Elusiveness being in the capstone, it's the dog shit you have to take along the way to get it.
Oh yeah. Like, if you just freed up the points from improved sprint, improved sap, and then maybe you were able to drop like one, the dead, what is it? Deadened nerves. If you just had those 3 points, like already the tree would feel better. But yeah, once the padding improves, I think it will be a bit better.
Like what about what about this? Couldn't they just like this is one of the things, the first things I think they'll do. Like they just need to fucking like, why does this stuff in the middle all not like connect with each other and give you like so much more option? This is like, look at every other spec that is new. It's like it all looks like this. It can all connect with each other at some point and do that. But for Rogue, for some reason, it just kind of runs it down. So I don't know. Like I said, I think it's so hard to spend a lot. I think the biggest reason that it's important to spend time on this today is because it needs a lot of work. But while also acknowledging that we're giving the feedback before there's a lot of work done to it, because at least in my opinion, I think clearly there's going to be a lot of changes to this, especially because it's just kind of outdated with how the newer trees are. So we'll look at that as Outlaw, and then tell me what you think really changes for Sub before we move on to some of the spec trees. Whispyr.
For Sub, nothing really changes because for Sub, you have to have the second charge of Shadow Dance, or else the spec just kind of doesn't work. And then once you pick Shadow Dance, you're back at the, okay, well, do I go middle or do I go left? And the middle sucks, so we're back at going left.
Okay, so I filled out the same tree, and I'm assuming it's just some...
Haste sucks on Sub, so Alacrity might not be good.
Okay.
And they might want to take, another point in lethality, and then maybe Cold Blood for a finisher or something. It's kind of unclear where that last point should go, but in general, you're gonna still have this sort of same thing. Like maybe Thistletee gets buffed, you take Thistletee. Who knows? But yeah, it's either that or some utility that doesn't do anything for you.
All right, so
You also probably wouldn't want the virulent poisons, right?
Yeah. You could find multiple other things to do with that.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but it's the only damage trait that's left is the thing, right? Like, you could pick another utility point, but Virulent Poison is the only damage that you can choose in that situation.
And that's just an issue with the amount of points you have in the tree that you have to pick between utility. Like, you always want to get the damage stuff you want, and then the extra points are utility. With Rogue, you don't even, like, when in any spec are you going to have the option without feeling like shit to go back up and pick Prey on the Weak, something that's actually insane in multiple raid fights that very other classes in the game have. Actually, they used to be the only class in the game that has this. They actually gave this to Demon Hunters as an AoE. So Demon Hunters actually will have AoE Prey on the Weak with their Fear Sigil. But like, when are you going to have the option to go back up and get this kind of utility, or Nimble Fingers and Iron Stomach? Like, these are just complete, and you will never even consider these because of how bloated you are thinking about damage near the bottom. So just another thing and a lot to look at. Oh, someone said in chat that got removed. Is that true? Oh, it says it's still there. Maybe it got, maybe it's PTR that has it. You're 20%, you deal 20% increased damage to enemies for 5 seconds after Sigil of Misery's effect on them ends. Oh, it's you deal 20%, not everyone. Oh, giga lame. Hate that. Okay, whatever. Moving on. Okay, so basically this. So any notes to tie up the class tree other than there's like a lot of things that we haven't even selected or talked about that kind of need work? We're going to kind of just go through, because I actually think some of the spec trees for Rogue are really, really interesting and like have a lot of cool stuff to them and like have a ton of potential once they're touched up a bit. But just the class tree. Any final notes on this tree that we haven't touched about yet or talked about yet?
One thing, just really briefly, like, we have been shitting on the middle tree or the middle path quite a bit, and it's rightfully so. But that so versatile talent in the middle, the 2 point for 4% verse, I mean, that is a pretty good amount of damage that you're gaining for just a 2 point investment. But yeah, to not be able to access that without taking, like,
a 2% damage increase flat for a single talent point in most trees in the game is actually on the weaker side.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, oh, okay. I mean,
it's like, it's good, but like most talents, there's a lot of like, I'd say the average talent point you are spending for damage, 2% increases right around the average. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, I was comparing it to improved sap, so maybe that's why my basis is off.
It is quite better than improved sap. Note that, like, a lot of times, if you guys are wondering why these lines are here, it's not always like everything has to be damage in between everything. Like, note this, and this is probably why there isn't a lot of actual pathing on the tree in the middle, is there's a reason that this entire row here, what is this? Row 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The fifth row of talents, these three things are all things that don't increase your damage. That's on purpose, right? That is like they see them as a similar power level, and to go through any of the trees, you would have to, or any of the lines, you have to pick one of them, but obviously the pathing could be a lot better. Some other stuff we never talked about subterfuge, never talked about improved wound poison. But I guess there's not much to talk about there, right? It's
improved wound poison would have been really, really good in this M+ season, because like basically one of the big reasons that Hunter and Rogue are good right now are because they reduced the healing on the Shrouded Affix and the Zolgamuks. So that would be like a cool niche scenario, but it's definitely more of a PvP focused point. Like I can't really think of a time in Raid where you would be taking that. So
you guys talked about, I want to actually give you, this is going to put you a little bit on the spot. I didn't give you enough time to prepare this, but I don't know if you guys have considered something they've done is they've kind of swapped around in some trees what Covenant abilities remained from a previous expansion. So the one that they chose is Echoing Reprimand. If they made this more accessible, are you happy about this for all three specs? And if not, is there another Covenant ability or previous like Legion artifact, whatever? Oh, they did that in the Assassination tree, but like, is there something that you guys think could be more interesting here? Or are you guys happy with this as long as they make it reasonably accessible?
Yeah. So just I'm gonna go back a little bit.
Yeah, 1 second.
So
You're
turbo lagging for you. Yeah, he's full
you're
robot.
turbo robot. Yeah. Try talking again. Oh, he just left. He's gonna come back in a second, most likely.
I guess my only thing is you never once played Kyrian as Assassination. It was played a little bit as Outlaw and it was played a little bit as Sub. But I feel like Flag has been used by all three specs, and they changed Flag like now that it's in the Sub tree, and it does make a lot of sense there, especially that they changed it to Mastery, because Sub loved Flag and it was really, really good in M+ and stuff. But like that is the one Covenant ability that was used by all three specs, and it does seem like at least Assassination wouldn't probably never want Echoing Reprimand. So
is Flag the only thing that they didn't give you all from last expansion? Because like multiple trees have access to Bone Spike and Sepsis, right? Is actually I think it's the only one they didn't include.
Sub has Flag.
Oh, Sub has Flag. Okay.
Yeah.
Wait, that's interesting. I think you guys are the only class in the game that is getting all 4 of their Covenant abilities to return. Maybe that just means you guys had sick Covenant abilities, because a lot of other classes had like 1 or 2 that was pretty dog, like design-wise.
Yeah, they were pretty well balanced, all in all.
Yeah, that's a good thing. That's cool.
Yeah. So, anyways, what I was trying to say is I generally agree with QVC, but the wound poison thing is mostly a PvP thing. And then I think Echoing Reprimand just needs to either be replaced or just removed, because it's really difficult. Like Outlaw and Sub both have reduction mechanics with their combo points, and Assassination doesn't. So the extra combo point, like the 7 combo point thing, just makes Rupture longer, and that's not really that great. So yeah, I don't know. I would honestly put like Bone Spike or Flag in there, and then that's basically it.
Yeah, Bone Spike and Flag, and then the note under it could be what made Flag good, right? Like the legendary potentially. And then yeah, because like I think it's Outlaw. All 3 specs have Sepsis. Outlaw has Bone Spike, and Sub has Flag. But I think Bone Spike is like insanely fun to play as Rogue.
Yeah, Bone Spike is so fun.
Yeah,
I would love for them to get rid of Echoing Reprimand in the class tree and put Bone Spike there.
Yeah, Bone Spike's turbo fun. Okay. Moving on from the class tree, needs a lot of work. Assassination tree. We're gonna have Whispyr mainly work again. JPC, you can filter in whenever you want. Gonna kind of just talk about how you'd play it in most scenarios. I think Assassination's really interesting because it has some really awesome like AoE tech at the bottom that they kind of haven't had in a long time or ever. That can give them some burst and potentially like just huge damage in an AoE environment. They've replaced Vendetta with Deathmark, added some new stuff that's never been used before, and then added an old Legion thing back. Again, they have some 3 points at the bottom, but I think overall this is like it's got a lot of good things going for it here for sure. All right, so if you want to Whispyr, just bring me down in like a let's just say let's start with like a single target build, and then we'll kind of filter into like a Mythic plus E kind of build, so we can talk about stuff like Indiscriminate Carnage.
Yeah, sure. So for single target, obviously we have to take that, and then we're going down the left side. So we're taking Improved Shiv, and then we're not taking Cut to the Chase. We're taking Elaborate Planning.
Sure.
And then now in order to get our thing, we're taking Venomous Wounds. That's our energy. Improved Poison is just poison chance. We're taking Shadow Step as well, 2 charges.
Okay.
And then we're going to take a second charge of Shiv and just go down this path again. So taking Venom Rush, taking Vicious Venoms. We're taking Death Mark as well. So that's our main cooldown now. Vendetta doesn't exist. And now in order to get the gate out, now we actually have a little bit of choice. And this is one of the good things that actually came back is they added some connectors. So now you can skip things like Master Assassin or Venom Rush. So if you don't want Venom Rush, which is the point next to Death Mark that we took,
Yeah.
you can skip those now. So that's good. But we're just going to go down the right side for now and just grab all those points. So we're going to grab the Rupture and Garrote damage.
Okay.
Then we're going to grab Improved Garrote. I want to skip Master Assassin for now because of how Dance interacts with it. I don't really know if that's going to survive.
Okay.
Lethal Dose is really good, so we're going to take that. And now we have 2 points. And we have the option of taking a bunch of stuff in the bottom row. We could take Exsanguinate.
I love how powerful these 1-point nodes are. You're getting like Doomblade, which is a good legendary. You're getting like potentially Amplifying Poison, the new double poison thing. Twist the Knife, Maim Mangle, just like your Crimson Tempest. If you just look at all the 1-point things you have, they were like pretty high value single like legendaries or really powerful things in the past, and they're looking at them as 1-pointers just feels really good.
Oh yeah, this point in the tree where you have to make this decision, I really love this. So like we can take, for example, Twist the Knife, or we can take Doomblade. I'm gonna take Maim Mangle just for now. As a sample, but you can take like so many different things, and it's really cool. I also want to take Doomblade though, so we're gonna take both. Those both buff Mutilate, and so they just kind of interact. Now under Doomblade, we're gonna take Sepsis.
Got it.
And then we're gonna take Blindside on the other side, and then go down and take Kingsbane.
Got it. And then again, assuming even if nothing else changed, I believe all of these 3-pointers here will not exist. Taking Kingsbane, which is good. So this alone, you still have 4 points remaining, but I feel like this alone is like gonna play really well in like a single target scenario. What are you doing with the rest of the points?
So there are 2 options now, the way I see it. Well, kind of 3, but for single target, there's 2 main options that you can pick. And one is like I'm gonna Giga Burst, and that's my thing, and that's my job, and I'm gonna do it. And the other one is more of a sustained, more energy, more over time type thing.
Okay.
So if we're trying to Giga Burst, under Lethal Poison, we have Shrouded Suffocation for more Garrote damage.
That they brought this back. It's not as powerful, I think, as like the like I don't think your Garrotes are gonna be doing as much as they did with like 3 Shrouded Suffocations, right? In like a Mythic Plus scenario in BFA.
Oh, yeah, no way.
Yeah, but the fact that they're giving you the additional combo points is such a nice quality of life thing.
Yeah, I agree. Because now if you do 3 Garrotes from Stealth, you're at 6 combo.
Oh, he might have hard DC'd.
Okay.
He's back. He's back.
Yeah, I hate it. Comcast. Anyways, yeah. So after taking Shrouded, we can take Ixang because Ixang has interactions with the Giga Garrote. It also has interactions with Deathmark, which I think are really interesting.
Definitely.
And so now we have what, 1 point left?
2 points, I believe. I might have missed something you had me do. I believe it's 2.
Okay. So with 2 points, now you can just kind of go down the middle, take, say, Twist the Knife into 1 point of Poison Bomb. And that would sort of be the filler points that you have. You could also take, a point in, whatever.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of stuff here. If you felt like you didn't want that like minor damage increase from these two things, you could go Master Assassin and even Iron Wire for like some like a specific thing you need to silence on a fight, like a P2 of like thinking in a raid setting, like P2 of like Anduin, right? Like having a 6-second silence with Master Assassin, like bursting one of those ads would be sick. Also, not to mention that Iron Wire could and I believe will have some kind of insane interaction with Indiscriminate Carnage, but we'll talk about that during the AoE build. So, like, yeah, you definitely have a lot of actions. One thing I'm noticing is that you are not taking the Slice and Dice extension at all from Cut to the Chase, either as a 1 or a 2-point investment. Does this mean you think Assassination is going to be keeping up Slice and Dice natty in this expansion?
Yes, but the problem with Cut to the Chase is that right now it's a passive that does 3 seconds. And now you're putting in 2 points to get 2 seconds.
So passively, it already gets extended by 3 seconds per combo point?
Yeah, so what it is on live is it's 3 seconds.
Oh, I got it. Okay.
But now you're having to put 2 points in to get 2 seconds on it. And that's just not great.
No.
I mean, you could take some, but it's just...
I will shout it from the fucking rooftops. Make this a 1-point talent that is almost guaranteed and make it so you don't have to apply. I think playing Assassination and applying Slice and Dice as like part of that is bad. Like it's just dog shit. I think keeping up Slice and Dice, Savage Roar, Inquisition for Ret Paladins, and that's a thing. That is some like old WoW shit that feels horrible in 2022. I just don't think that should even be an option. Horrific. So moving on, definitely something to look at for Cut to the Chase. But yeah, so you basically have some options here. I want you to kind of put this to be a Mythic Plus build real quick, because I was going to bring up a couple of these other talents, but I think we're going to naturally do that by making a more AoE focused build. So just transfer this. I'll actually just take it all the way back up from after the first gate, because I assume a lot of the stuff will be similar.
Yeah, so I just want to quickly mention Poison Qatar, which is to the left of Cut to the Chase.
Okay.
So it's locked behind Cut to the Chase, and it might be okay damage-wise, but because it's behind Cut to the Chase...
Bad pathing.
And, it's bad pathing. Elaborate Planning is just so much stronger. It increases all your damage. So it just doesn't really make sense to go into Cut to the Chase.
It's something that Poison Qatar, especially in an AoE Mythic Plus scenario, is something you'd consider, but you just can't get it because it's behind something that isn't relevant. It's just bad pathing. They've fixed scenarios like this very frequently. I doubt this will be how it goes. Yeah.
So we're going to kind of do the same thing. We're going to take Shiv, and then we're going to take Crimson Tempest. Crimson Tempest is our only AoE.
Okay.
Deathmark, we're going to skip the Venom Rush because we're not mutilating
of course.
that much. Lethal Dose is great. We're also going to take the Garrote stuff above that.
Yep.
Master Assassin could be good if you want like a dance thing, but I don't really believe in it. And now we're back to sort of a decision where it's a lot of AoE. I mean, a lot of single target, not a lot of AoE. There's a poison passive above Deathmark that we can take, which is good. That's just sort of an all-around.
Oh, yeah.
And now I really enjoy taking Twist the Knife for the Envenom chance, or the Envenom duration, I mean. Because you're not envenoming a lot, but it is a filler spell that you're doing, and poisons are cranking. Like, there is so much poison damage. So I think that it's actually a little bit good to have some extra duration whenever you're casting that. And now you can sort of take a bunch of stuff. Amplifying Poison isn't that great because it works off Envenom. You could take Venom Rush into the, I think it's Flying Daggers, I think it's called. And that's okay, but again, the pathing sucks because you don't want to take a Mutilate talent to take a Fan of Knives talent.
Oh yeah, same thing. These Poison Qatar and Flying Dagger should be like next to themselves, next to something that's like very generic, like Shiv, and just like go off of each other. That makes total sense. That also feel good because like Phantom Knives has always felt very mediocre in AoE, and having things that buff that a little bit to where you don't feel as bad for pressing it when you only have a few spenders would feel really good.
Yeah, and so now we unlock the gate, which is good. So we're going to take the entire right side, Shrouded Suffocation, all 3 Scent of Bloods, and Indiscriminate Carnage.
So this is the thing I wanted to talk about. This is the thing I'm the most excited about Outlaw in a dungeon scenario for a few reasons. So I believe this was asked in the Rogue Discord to Reels, I think, that like Indiscriminate Carnage should work off of Stealth Garrotes, right?
Yeah, that's the current idea is that it should.
Is that it should work off Stealth Garrotes. If you were to take Poison Bomb, it could have Poison Bomb interaction to where the 9 ruptures you're putting out all have a chance to pretend. Or no, they changed this to Envenom to... Yep. Oh, I forgot. That was it initially, but then they changed Poison Bomb to be Envenom just for this reason. That's actually lame. Never mind. I forgot about that. And then also, if you wanted to have like some kind of utility in a dungeon environment, you could take Master Assassin to Iron Wire, and that Stealth Garrote should silence all of these targets as well from Indiscriminate Carnage. So it actually has like insane tech, I think, in a dungeon environment.
Yeah, the full combo that was sort of like the moment we saw Carnage and the moment we heard that it would like interact with everything, like the gears started turning, and you're like, okay, we're taking all of the Garrote buff stuff, we're taking Dance, we're taking Night Stalker for the amplified on that, we're taking Cold Blood in the class tree, right? So now we're making the Garrote 100% crit if that works. We're getting the Dance multiplier, we're getting the Night Stalker multiplier, all the Garrote shit.
Yep.
Then we're doing an Indiscriminate Carnage with a Death Mark, and then we're extang the whole thing, and it's gonna be huge.
And you're getting 20 agi for 9 targets that just got Rupture on it as well, right? Yeah. So you are. This is like the best thing that's happened to Assassination AoE in a long time.
It's the only thing that's happened to Assassination AoE.
Yeah, very good point. Yeah.
So with the remaining points, I really like taking Doomblade into SBS.
Oh man, this is gonna play so good. Oh yeah, my god. This is
Mythic
so
Plus
fun.
Great.
I hope it's good at Mythic Plus. Dude, all this bleed shit with Bone Spike sounds unbelievable.
And now we kind of have some options. How many points do we have left? Do we have 3 points?
Yeah, you do have 3. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, that's what I thought. So my personal pick for the last 3 points, which is a little bit controversial, is 2 points into Poison Bomb, 1 point into Dashing.
Okay, so Poison Bomb meaning that you're just going to be Envenoming as a filler anyway, right? So it's going to get value.
Yeah. So you already kind of Envenom as a filler. Poison Bomb does a little bit of AoE. Obviously, we don't know what the tuning is. In Legion, this was Giga. Everywhere else, it was not Giga. So who knows if it'll actually do damage, but Dashing is really good to sort of help out in the poison department. It also gives us some extra energy, which is good. I know in Mythic Plus, Assassination doesn't really want that much haste. Obviously, we don't know how that's going to translate into all the bleed stuff that we have now. Maybe haste is actually a good stat. But in general, with haste, eventually you reach a point in Mythic Plus where you're at like 5 targets and you have bleeds on everything and you're just drowning in energy. Right, like absolutely drowning. Yeah. And so haste at that point doesn't really become good, and instead you'd want like mastery to increase the damage of those. In single target, if you're going crit mastery, then you're getting to a boss and you're just slowing to a crawl because you have no energy regen whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so dashing kind of helps fill that gap of being sort of a passive damage increase, but then also giving you a little bit of that energy back that you were missing in boss fights.
No, that definitely feels good. And then I want to talk about Poison Bomb a little bit, though, and Dragon Tempered Blades. So Poison Bomb, it used to be basically all combo point spenders. Rupture, Crimson Tempest, and Venom. Now
just in Venom and Rupture. Actually.
Oh, just in Venom and Rupture. Okay. How do you feel about them moving it off of Rupture? I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like it would feel worse in single target unless they buffed the chance. Oh, they made it more likely to spawn off of Envenom, right? Than it did previously.
It's 10% per combo point now at 2 points, which means that at 5 points you're basically 1 in 2 chances.
Okay. Yeah,
before it was like a 15% chance.
Yeah, so they basically wanted it to be more of like a single target thing, and also maybe this is better because if you're gonna be filling as much, it's at least deterministic and you know what it's gonna happen. Plus, I'm sure they were probably scared of the interaction between Indiscriminate and Poison Bomb, right? Like that could just pop off insane. We didn't really talk enough about amplifying poison or dragon tempered blades in either a single target or an AoE scenario. What do you guys think?
Yeah,
These are both brand new things. What do you guys think about them?
So the thing about dragon tempered is it's sort of a middle ground. Like, it might be good in single target as a sustained option, but if it wants to compete with...
Oh no.
Yeah, it's tough for me because like if you read Lethal Dose, this is one of the main things. Like the interaction between Lethal Dose and Dragon Temper Blades is one of the main reasons why Dragon Temper Blades would be so good, because you're getting all this free damage from having an extra poison, and the extra poison is doing damage. As to whether or not like that is more damage than Kingsbane, like Kingsbane doesn't work right now, so you like I can't really tell, but. Also, I'd never played WoW really when Kingsbane was a thing, and all of the assassination rogues that I talked to say that they love Kingsbane. So I don't know. It's if it's really fun to play and Kingsbane does a ton of damage, then it's gonna be tough. I've also heard that amplifying poison can kind of, I don't know. Some people were saying it was more of a PvP thing. Like big envenoms instead of like this sustained DPS output. I don't know.
I think because that was actually the thing that like initially made me feel really interesting about this spec. But also they gave you and we'll kind of just wait for him to come back. On the way to Kingsbane, you also get like the execute thing. I wonder how much of your damage next expansion is going to be poisons and bleeds as an assassination rogue. It's probably pretty high, right?
Yeah, I think it is pretty high. My initial thought was that like the middle path should be for just an all-out burn fight where like execute doesn't really matter, and that the left path should be like the execute version. And so if the left path is just better overall and it's better in execute, like why would you ever take the middle path? That was kind of my initial thinking, like qualitatively. But a lot of I think I'd have to look at a log, but like at least 40% of the damage right now is bleeds and poisons, and like with the improved Garrote and stuff like that coming, I mean you could be seeing even more damage, the improved rupture and whatnot.
Are you back, Whispyr?
Kind of. I'm raw dogging it from my phone now because I don't trust my internet anymore.
Fucking raw dogging it. Okay. Yeah, what we're doing right now is kind of let you finish your thought. I actually was just checking something real quick. I wanted to see how much damage. Do you know this actually? How much damage rogues do in execute extra? Like how much of your damage is poison and bleeds? It's gonna be different next expansion, so it's hard to tell. But like right now,
yes, yeah. So the tier set is procking it up quite a bit. But right now we don't actually have any extra damage in execute because all of our execute comes from a legendary and blindside, and we don't take either of them. If we were to take them, we'd take a hit in single target. But I think if I had to give you like a rough number, I think we'd maybe do like 15%-ish more damage.
That's pretty good.
Maybe like 20.
I think it's gonna be really important for melee to be competitive in execute, because execute is like very often the most important DPS niche that exists, and they have like Unholy Decay is going to be unreal in execute with talent they got and just the amount of burst they can do in one singular phase with Lust right now. And Warriors execute has gotten so much better. So like you guys having an execute option, I think is so important to at least in raid content. The fact that you guys have a line to do that, especially if there's gonna be less points involved to get the max benefit of it, I think that'll be really good. What were you saying about Dragon Temper Blades Whispyr before you got knocked off?
Yeah, Dragon Tempered is sort of like a hybrid thing. So Dragon Tempered doesn't have the burst of Kingsbane and it doesn't have the fun of Kingsbane, but it sort of bridges the gap between single target Kingsbane and AoE Carnage, right? So like Carnage is very AoE, Kingsbane is very single target, and Dragon Tempered can do both, but it doesn't do either well. And so the question then becomes like, okay, well, it has this niche where it does a little bit of both, but what does that actually mean in terms of when we'll play it? And it's sort of hard to tell when you would play it right now, because it would either have to be overtuned or like a bunch of other talents on the way to Kingsbane, for example, would have to be trash.
Oh yeah, because right now they're good. Just like in a line, you just get like Maim, Mangle, Blindside, Execute, Kingsbane, right? It's like none of that feels bad.
Yeah.
Except for the 3 points. But yeah, go ahead.
And then the other thing that I know a lot of assassination rogues, and probably a lot of chat is like hammering in, is why not Kingsbane and Dragon Temper? And that is an interaction that is so immense just on a baseline level that it had to be removed. And so you cannot get both because the points just don't let you. And that's not something that's going to ever change because the interaction between the two is just so strong that there's no way to tune it.
There's definitely ways around that, right? You could literally just make it a choice node and put something else in the capstone in the middle if they're going to remove.
Yeah, but
because like that,
but then you wouldn't be able to take both, right? The whole thing is that like people want both, and that's not possible.
Yeah, people want both, and then I think the fact that they may have ever put the 3-point nodes here is to make sure you can't get both. But the 3-point nodes are definitely going to go away, like every other class. So they're going to need another way to make you not be able to take both of those things. So
yeah, and I think that the first idea is probably to just take all 3 of those capstones and just put them in like a 3-way choice. I don't know if that's a thing in other classes.
No, that's turbo. Yeah, not a thing.
All right, well then probably just 2-way, so that's fine. I don't really have a problem with that, but yeah, Dragon Tempered is in a weird spot.
Yeah. Okay. I guess maybe this can be available to both of you. I just want to talk about a few talents that we never really talked about. The good thing is I think we like considered almost every point on this tree or talked about it, which means that the tree's really good, but there's definitely a few that we need to talk about. Let's start with this. Tiny Toxic Blade. Shiv does increased damage. The good thing is you can kind of go around it. You have 2 charges of Shiv now, but you can like pick another line that does not involve going into it. But it is a capstone level node, and I think the power level of Tiny Toxic Blade relatively is pretty low. What do you guys think about that ability?
Just kind of reads like a meme to me. I think at one point the legendary, like, because this was a legendary in Shadowlands, and it wasn't that much worse actually than Doomblade and the poison one that you played in Sanctum. I think like it was worse. It was worse for sure. But I kind of see it as like a PvP thing, like hit the big shiv, do big damn. I'm not sure, but because it does the shiv can kind of hit for a little bit, but yeah, it just seems a little bit out of place for where it is in the tree.
Yeah, the only issue is to like get to Zoldyck, you either have to take like let's just say you didn't want Main Mangle and Blindside, even though they're both good. If you wanted to get the execute tech, like Tiny Toxic Blade is like a 1-point option in between those, and then the other you have to get 2 points to get it through the other direction. But both of those things are good, so it's not a huge deal. And if they change the pathing, they could maybe move this to somewhere else in the tree where it's a little bit more relevant, because it doesn't seem like it's quite on the same power level as a lot of the other things in this capstone level. People might mention PvP, but like again, outside of like the class priest and no other class, no one's out here making like huge sacrifices to incorporate PvE and PvP. I'm actually kind of surprised at how much they kind of play into each other, and both portions of the game per class and spec want the same thing. Priest is the absolute, like, that's not true with Priest. So I don't know if that's necessarily true with Rogue. I think you could probably put this somewhere else in the tree and it would still make a lot of sense. Another thing, internal bleeding. You can kind of skip around it, but it seems kind of shit, right?
Damage-wise, it's actually better than an Envenom. So, like, it would take priority over...
This is almost certainly PvP.
Yeah, you would take it in Mythic Plus as well, like, sometimes. But in general, it's PvP talent, PvP bleed. No one really cares.
Yeah, sure. I mean, but the thing is like, if you are going to have a PvP talent somewhere in the tree, or something that's largely used in, like, PvP or other content, it's not in the way of anything, right? And the only thing is... You could grab Intent to Kill. I guess you have to get Internal Bleeding in a way to get Intent to Kill, which doesn't strike you as a super bad thing right away, because it's it's not something that's insanely powerful, and you're already getting 2 charges of Shadow Step. So like getting reduction on Shadow Step in a lot of cases isn't something you'll actually want. But it does kind of not make sense that it's after that, right? Like, wouldn't it make a lot more sense to have like the Shadow Step node be right after Shadow Step, I think?
Yeah, but Intent to Kill is also very PvP. Like, that is not something that is ever used in PvE, and there's a Shadow Step in the class tree as well. So I don't know at what point in time you'd ever need to have cooldown reduction on 2 charges of Shadow Step in PvE.
I'm trying to think of a fight where you Shadow Step a lot. I think there's definitely a scenario... Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a scenario where, like, it could be like a 1-point tech option on a fight where you genuinely just Shadow Step all the fucking time, and it's actually worth it. But I just don't know if... in that case, it would feel weird that it's behind Internal Bleeding, was my only point. And then we mentioned Cut to the Chase. I believe we talked about every single other thing in this entire tree in practice, and I think that's like really, really sick. One thing I didn't even realize with Iron Wire is if you do that AoE stealth garrote that silences everything, you also are making them all do 15% less dam for that entire time as well. It's fucking sick, man. That is Assassination Rogue is big stonks. So usually what I like to when we're done talking about each specific spec before we move on, I kind of want you guys to talk about what you think. And again, there's going to be some changes to this tree, but like what this spec looks like in Dragonflight compared to where it is now. What do you guys? Are you guys happy? Are you guys happy with the direction? Is it more powerful? Does it have more tools? Are you excited to play it? I'll just give you guys each some space to talk about Assassination and Dragonflight.
I'm really excited because I haven't really had the opportunity to play it, particularly in M+, like at all, because it hasn't been good for basically all of Shadowlands. So I think with all the cool new stuff that's available, it's gonna be so fun playing it in dungeons and seeing what it can do. And I think also that it's a bit more, it's not so one-dimensional. Like you don't just do single target now. You kind of have this cool ability to flex whether you want to do AoE and with the new spells with Kingsbane. I'm really excited, and I also think that the choice note of Sepsis and Bone Spike fits. They both fit Assassination really, really well as well.
What about you, Whispyr?
Yeah, I pretty much agree with everything XQC said. It's looking really, really nice for Mythic Plus. Indiscriminate Carnage and SBS combined is Giga Stonks. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to playing with it in Mythic Plus.
Okay, fuck yeah. Let's move on. Outlaw Gang. We already spoke a lot about Restless Crew. I'm going to have JPC as your favorite spec be able to kind of lead this. You can talk single target and raid, talk about Mythic Plus a little bit. Let's start from a raid angle.
Sure. Okay, so we're going to take a point in Opportunity and a point in Blade Flurry. The reason why we're taking a point in Blade Flurry, even though it's an AoE talent, is because there's good, valuable skills tied to that, one of which is Between the Eyes. There's like a core rogue ability, makes all your abilities have a higher chance to crit, so you're doing more damage.
Also, by the way, the fact that you have to pick Blade Flurry to pick Between the Eyes, even in pure single, I think is totally fine. Like I said, spec trees are a spot where you can absolutely force you to take things you think are fundamental to the spec, so all good.
Yeah. Then we're going to take Combat Potency. It's just really good, more energy. And then we are going to take Adrenaline Rush, and we're going to take Grappling Hook, and then going to take Combat Stamina.
That's so fucking good. That's new?
Yeah, it's new. And only Outlaw has just 10% stam right off the top.
That is such an insane node. I think that I wonder how many nodes across all spec trees in the game have a node this powerful in the first part of their thing that's new. That's fucking wild.
Yeah.
Warlock has it, but it's in the class tree, and I think it's just the beginning of their second gate. Okay. Continue. You have one more point to spend before we can move on.
So I put this in Hit and Run. Riposte, which is right next to it, seems like kind of a cool leveling talent, maybe a PvP talent, but like you're never really dodging attacks, like in Raid or M+, unless you have aggro.
Get that shit out of here.
And also, I mean, taking Hit and Run is fine, but like you're also probably taking Fleet-Footed in the class tree, so now you're moving 30% faster, and that is kind of cool. Like you're like zooming around, but
it's nuts.
Yeah, it's
awesome.
It's definitely new because you've never really been that fast before, so that's kind of cool. Then you take a point in Ruthlessness. Just a good talent there, gives you combo point when you use a finisher, at least 5 or more.
Okay.
Slicer Dicer, which is a new talent. I'm really excited for that. I think it'll be good, like because the way it reads is like, let's say normally slicing dice gives you 50% attack speed. Now it should give you 68% if you use the 6-point slicing dice. So that's kind of cool because Outlaw does a lot of auto attack damage. You take Restless Blades, that's core to the class, gives you the CDR. Fatal Flourish generates a ton of energy over the course of a fight, and then
wait. Okay. Yep.
Go ahead. Well, you want to take Roll the Bones, also core to the class. Here, it gets a little bit interesting because as it is right now in the class tree, you take Deeper Stratagem on the left-hand side. Yeah. And that gives you 6 combo points, and it makes it so all of your finishers deal 5% more damage. Right now, these two don't stack. So if you take this Deeper Stratagem in the Outlaw tree...
It's obviously going to give you 7.
Yeah, okay. So then you
Yeah.
would be taking deeper stratagem because it would also give you 5% more damage again on your dispatch and your
Yeah.
finishers, so that's good. Um, the stuff on the left-hand side is brand new. And heavy hitter, which is not yet implemented, and audacity. So I think these sound very cool, and I am taking them in more of like a single target focus thing, and it should interact with dance as well. Basically, every time you ambush, it is going to do like the echoing reprimand effect, where it's going to mark a combo point, and it's going to make that combo point where it's 7 combo points. The thing that I'm not sure about it is if you were to ambush twice back to back, is that going to supercharge 2 combo points, or are you still going to only have 1 and you have to consume that one before it supercharges another one? If it supercharges 2 like simultaneously before you've consumed the previous one, then I think this sounds really, really fun. It sounds really good. But yeah, I like that, and I like audacity as well because it's just going to give you more more ambushes, which is going to give you more supercharge and more count the odds, which we'll get to. But I took 2 in triple threat,
Okay.
which is just below that, and then I took float like a butterfly. If you wanted to be more DPS focused, you could take loaded dice or sleight of hand. They aren't the biggest DPS gains, and I feel like the value that you gain from being able to feint whenever and having evasion whenever is pretty good. It's a bit fight specific, but
Yeah, I think that's definitely tech. I think you would
Yeah.
probably, in almost all scenarios, opt to take a damage point over that, and then take this on fights where you think you need it.
Yeah,
100%.
it also this is new, so this doesn't exist right now in the game. So evasion is just a flat 2 minute, and your feint is 15 seconds. So yeah, but yeah, if you were gonna take a damage point, I think sleight of hand is better. Overall, if you were gonna go for like a burst type of thing, I guess you would put it with adrenaline rush.
Yeah.
But yeah, you want to take 2 points in count the odds, which is just below that. And the thing, they changed count the odds. So the way it works on live right now is when you're stealthed, the duration and chance is tripled, and the base probability is much higher than 20%. I'm not sure exactly what percent it is. Whispyr, do you know off the top of your head?
Nope.
It's effectively right now, if you ambush or dispatch from stealth, you're almost guaranteed a buff. And I think it plays really, really well. And it also works to like reduce the amount of RNG that the spec has and was known for in its past, because you're getting so many buffs so much more frequently. You're much less likely to have like this dry spell where you're nothing, or you roll insane buffs and you're just doing so much more damage than another outlaw rogue. So I think this nerf to this specific count the odds is going to feel really bad from a gameplay standpoint, because now it's going to only be 60% when you use
But I think it has to be, right? Because they're giving you Shadow Dance. Like, I feel like this. I feel like the
this
reason
only works when stealthed, and Shadow Dance just gives you the access to use stealth abilities.
it's not actually stealth.
Yeah. So
Sure.
like, because part of the opener is you ambush from stealth and then you vanish ambush again. And on live right now, you have a very, very high chance to get 3, maybe 4 buffs. And that feels really, really good. Whereas here, you would not be expecting.
Maybe it's because Keep It Rolling exists.
Yeah, but that's another thing, which I'll talk about in a bit. But continuing on, you want to take 2 points in improved main gouge. Apparently that's pronounced men gauche or something, by the way. It's French.
Nah, no one cares. It's all good.
Yeah. And then you take Dreadblades. Dreadblades is a talent that exists right now, but it's on the same row as Alacrity. And Alacrity was so good that you basically just never took Dreadblades. It had some cool interactions with Flag, but they changed Dreadblades, so now all of the combo points that you spend reduce Dreadblades' cooldown, which currently doesn't exist in the game. So this went from being like a 1.5-minute cooldown on live to a much, much shorter cooldown, and it makes it really, really good. So every generator you do fills up your combo point bar, and it means you're just pumping out finishers, but it's at the price of 5% health per finisher. It lasts for 10 seconds, but it's really, really good.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so then
Sounds fun.
Oh, yeah, it's good. I took Ghostly Strike all the way over on the left.
Okay.
You would take just whichever one does more damage, Sepsis or Ghostly Strike, but Ghostly Strike is just a really, really good talent, and I'm not sure which is better. I like Ghostly Strike more anyways. Here, I put a point in Restless Crew. Whether it gets nerfed or not, or it's there or not, the two below that, Dispatcher, are really, really good. It's like the stacking thing where the more you dispatch, the more damage it does, the less energy it costs, and then it falls off after 10 seconds. And it flows really, really well with Dreadblades because you're dispatching over and over and over again. This was a bit of a tricky point because,
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
well, we have 2 points left, and you have Keep It Rolling, and you have Take 'em by Surprise, but you also have Precise Cuts. And Precise Cuts is all the way on the right, and basically it makes it so for every below 5 targets, like Blade Flurry is supposed to hit 5 targets, or like 4 targets, so you're hitting 5 total. For every number of targets below that, your Blade Flurry does more damage. So on a fight like Lords of Dread, this would be really, really good. Or a fight like Enerva, this would be really good.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't want to take this on like a Skolex, right? So I put one and Keep It Rolling because it looks fun. And then I put one and Take Them by Surprise because this should have generally high uptime, and 10% haste on a buff that has high uptime is a lot. But the thing that I'm not too sure about is with the Count the Odds nerf, it's going to make it notably harder to have those windows where you can snipe the Keep It Rolling. Because the way it would work on live right now is like you'd roll, you'd ambush, you'd vanish, you'd ambush, and you'd have 4 buffs probably. Probably those are good buffs, and then you'd be able to hit your Keep It Rolling. But if you don't have good enough buffs to merit hitting the button, and there will be a bunch of sims done on it and stuff, it's going to feel a bit weird because you want to be pressing it on cooldown, but you don't want to extend bad buffs.
It's actually insanely RNG. Like your RNG on a pull will be huge. And I guess like the whole bit with Outlaw is that like it's like RNG 5 buffs or whatever, but when I initially looked at this, I actually assumed it would work with Shadow Dance, and I just assumed that every time you're doing a Shadow Dance opener with Count the Odds and Keep It Rolling, you would just have an extremely high chance to like snipe some cool buffs and be really powerful during Lust. But
well, you should still have a higher chance than on live to get more buffs, because instead of Sinister Striking in the Shadow Dance window, you would ambush, and ambush has a chance to proc Count the Odds. But it's because of the nerf to Count the Odds. Like if Count the Odds were the exact same as it is on live right now, then I think Keep It Rolling would probably be fine, even without the stealth interaction on Shadow Dance. It would be completely fine.
Wait, so you're ambushing and okay, I was about to say 20% that you not have it for 5 seconds, just the duration and chance to double itself, but you're gonna be like ambushing in your opener in Shadow Dance. So you'll still get things outside of the guaranteed ones with Vanish.
Well, what I'm saying is that they are guaranteed right now, and on Dragonflight they're not guaranteed anymore, because you only have a 60% chance when you open with your ambush in stealth, whereas on live it's closer to 100.
Yeah, so I guess the feeling is like if you don't get that high roll, it's like rolling. You basically are having 2 60% rolls happen on the opener, and
yeah,
and that's like a really unlikely to get both, and it's gonna feel great when you get both, and feel like shit when you don't.
Well, even if you did get both, if they weren't good ones, like you're less likely. Like let's say you opened, right? You rolled 1 buff and then you got both of them, but both of them were just mediocre buffs. So now you have 1 bad buff and 2 mediocre buffs. Like, do you really want to keep it rolling that? No, you probably wouldn't. But if the Count the Odds chance were higher, you would probably be able to pick up a 4th buff, and then it would be like that 4th buff would be guaranteed to be one of the 3 remaining good buffs, and then it would probably be worth to keep it rolling. But it's just a bit interesting whether or not it's gonna play well, because I think one of the main things that a lot of people have gotten attached to in Shadowlands is the way that Count the Odds works right now, and it's pretty core to how Outlaw plays. And for it to be nerfed so much, I don't think it'll feel good. But I guess we'll see.
No, yeah, it definitely sounds like an issue. All right, so if you're going to slam this around in a Mythic Plus scenario, how much changes?
Probably quite a few.
All right,
also,
before we go into that, I actually have a couple of thoughts
sure.
as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the first one is I know that you mentioned that Deeper has that 5% buff to finishers. It actually doesn't anymore.
it
So
did
that
a few days ago.
Oh,
Unless
It's
they
just a combo
cheat.
point.
it's really hard to tell right now because if you look at the tooltip on Wowhead a lot of the times, and then you go into beta, you don't know which one is right because sometimes the beta things are wrong, sometimes the Wowhead thing is wrong. Like Rep Paladins, for example, on Wowhead, they've data mined it as Divine Protection is a 20% DR on a 1 minute cooldown. But if you go on live, it's 2. There's multiple classes that have literal abilities that aren't even in Dragonflight. They're not in their talent tree. They're not baseline. They're removed and they're there, right? So it's like really hard to actually tell which one it is.
But beta doesn't have the finisher damage either.
Well, I went on beta on stream yesterday, and I took a point out of Deeper Stratagem, and I opened my spellbook, and all of the finishers showed that they did less damage, and then I put the point back in Deeper Stratagem, and then they did more damage.
Oh, so you think it's not on the tooltip, but it's actually still working that way. Okay, so, but I mean, if it's changed on both tooltips, I would assume that that's just a mistake and that it probably won't work like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it didn't give the finisher damage, I don't think it would be that good.
And then there's the tech with keep it rolling that dance right now, it's intended to work with the increased chance, which is part of the reason why Count the Odds got brought down from 33 to 20. So it's actually supposed to give you that doubled or the doubled chance, right?
Yeah, it's a bit hard to tell because I've just been playing a lot on the beta, and I'm just going based off that since it doesn't work, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, but the whole thing was that dance in general has been it wants to be effects from stealth as well. That's why you saw Master Assassin in the Assassin tree. That's why that was nerfed. And that's why Count the Odds is nerfed as well, to sort of accommodate that a little bit more. But the entire idea is even in dance, you're just using ambushes and dispatches, right? So you use Shadow Dance, you get a huge 6 buff because you're just building and building and building and building off that chance. And then you can use Keep It Rolling to keep all of that going, and then you can just do a huge burst window.
Yeah, that sounds fucking nuts. That's what I assumed it was going to be. So that basically James is the opposite of me, where James does not think about how it should be or what it's going to be, literally just how it is right now and spending time on beta. That specific interaction, that's why I assumed they nerfed it, because if you're going to put Shadow Dance into Outlaw, that is definitely what they're intending on happening. And if they left old Count the Odds with that, it would be kind of stupid.
And then
that sounds fun. That sounds sick.
Yeah, I think that's legit one of the most fun interactions I think that any class has. That sounds fucking insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, there aren't too many things that are more fun than when you roll a 5 buff on Outlaw.
I mean, you're gonna get it much more consistently now in the
Yeah,
opener,
I know.
which I think is fine, because I think outside of your opener, randomly getting 5 buffs sometimes doesn't even feel as good. But the fact that you'd get it on the opener during Lust is gonna make it so much consistently better than it is right now.
And then heavy hitter. I'm not sure if the heavy hitter on the left, it's not implemented. I don't know if it's gonna stay, but right now in testing, the ambush supercharge points they overlap each other, so the procs just stack on the same one.
Yeah, I mean it's just definitely just not implemented right. I feel like it's
so
much of Rogue. It's hard if you're one of the people who goes off of how things work on beta with Rogue. I feel like you're probably just gonna end up being lost because I think it's the most dysfunctional class. Just more things don't work on Rogue than any other class.
I don't think heavy hitter is gonna stick around, honestly. I think that's gonna go in the future.
I actually really like that is this side of the tree, though. I think them implementing new talents for Outlaw to make them better in pure single target, and it's something you don't select in AoE, but something in specifically single target makes them more attractive. I think it's really, really good, though. So I hope they keep the same, philosophy.
Yeah.
And then Mythic Plus stuff is really cool, but I'll let James handle that.
Yeah, Reels in my chat said, oops, all bugs, in parentheses, soon, though. So, yeah.
Okay.
Pray.
Yes. So one of the most exciting things I think about Outlaw for AoE scenarios is on the right side of the tree. They increased the target cap of Blade Flurry with the talent Dancing Steel. So instead of only being able to hit 5 targets, you'll now be able to hit 8,
which is that's the most common AoE cap for classes that are not completely uncapped. Well, even the uncapped classes I think are soft capped at 20. Yeah.
Yeah, I know what. Well, most classes have fall off damage beyond 8, whereas Outlaws is a strict 8, I think. But there are not many pulls, if you really look at it, that actually have more than 8 targets.
Oh yeah.
So I think it's gonna be really, really good. The tricky question is, what do you drop in order to get over there? I
Oh,
would
it's a lot of
probably drop the
investment.
heavy. Yeah, I would drop the heavy hitter and the audacity. That is one thing I will note is it does feel a little bit. It does. I mean, you should have to get some investment in it because I think it'll have a big payoff. But like Ace Up Your Sleeves, which is a talent that comes after hit and run. So basically, you have to talent into move speed and then Ace Up Your Sleeves, which is like I read Ace Up Your Sleeves, and I mean I haven't seen The Sims, but it does not look like a good talent node. You barely press. I mean, you press between the eyes kind of infrequently. You would press it more often if you had green skins. It has effectively like a 1 in 4 chance to give you 4 combo points, and you press the button every 10, 15 seconds. So you're getting 4 combo points every 50 seconds, every minute. I don't know. It's just a bit. Yeah.
Ace is giga dog shit.
Yeah. Yeah. But the long arm of the Outlaw is kind of cool. It makes it so when Blade Flurry's up, you have an even bigger range. So if you take that plus the range over on the left side, which is we talked about was in a bit of a weird spot with the acrobatic strikes and the class tree, you have like giga range, which would be kind of cool. But yeah, I would probably drop.
It feels weird though, right? If you, I mean, think about this. I'm just gonna read these in order. If you pick Blade Flurry, which is kind of it's required on purpose to grab this.
Yeah.
If you want to have 8 target AoE with Blade Flurry, you have to select between the eyes something you want anyway. You'll have to select movement speed, the Ace Up Your Sleeve thing that you just said is giga dog shit, increase movement range just to get 8 target AoE. Seems a little strange. Like, I understand why they don't want this at the top of the tree because it's pretty powerful, but it's like the decisions have to make more sense than that.
Yeah, I would rather talent into Quick Draw to get to Dancing Steel. Like if there was a line between those two nodes, I would love that because
like
I
that.
really like Long Arm of the Outlaw is just a bit like. Do you really need like infinite range? I don't know. You already can hit from kind of far away, right? But Quick Draw is also a really good talent, which synergizes down low. This is another big thing where I'm not too sure how it's going to play out. It's going to be left a lot to the Sims, but the way, like, let's build a hypothetical like right side of the tree really quick. So how many points? So take one out of the Take 'em by Surprise, and which is the stealth icon in the bottom left.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and then take one out of Ghostly Strike, and then you should be able to go into Dancing Steel, which is there. Yeah.
Yep.
And then you should be able to get Quick Draw. And then how many do you have, Max?
0.
0. Okay, so yeah, we would need to drop Keep It Rolling, and we would need to drop. Yeah, so you'd need to drop. I think Dispatcher as well. And then you could pick up Fan the Hammer, and then you could pick up Greenskin. And are you still out? Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable. This seems...
So the thing is, Greenskin, like, and this is one of the things I wanted to touch on. Like, Keep It Rolling and the interactions with Dance and Count the Odds. Like, it's such an attractive playstyle to me, but it also just seems like it's better than going down the right side for this like pistol shot gameplay. So the way it works on the right side right now is like, normally when you play Outlaw, you press your Sinister Strike. If you get a proc, then you get a pistol shot proc. So your pistol shot should do big damn, and you press your pistol shot, and then it's gone, right? Well, now you don't just get 1 pistol shot proc, you get 3. And it stacks up to 6 if you take that Fan the Hammer talent. So you could very easily Sinister Strike, and now you have 6 stored up pistol shots. And your next like 5 to 6 globals would just consist of like pistol shotting over and over and over again, which feels really, really. I'm not a fan. And then also Greenskin. Greenskin is one of the premier legendaries right now for Rogue in like cleave situations. And it feels like it's cool. You shoot your between the eyes, and then you shoot a huge pistol shot. It does like big damn, like 50k damage or something. But it's just much less fun than Concealed Blunderbuss, which is the legendary that I think a lot of people prefer to play and what they play in Raid. And it just feels like the investment to get over here, to get Greenskin, and then you're having to give up Keep It Rolling, and the way that, like, I don't know, it just doesn't seem quite right.
Yeah, okay, so to sort of fix the tree from SPF, if you get rid of Triple Threat and Deeper, you get 3 points back, and you can take Keep It Rolling.
Where's the other one? Deeper.
Yeah, Deeper as well, and then, yeah.
Yeah, that is, that was one thing where I was like, damn, this is weird that you're only ever getting 1 capstone. I feel like you would just drop the stuff up here and do it. That's fine. Yeah, I feel like I'm just going to go ahead and say any Outlaw build that doesn't have Keep It Rolling in it seems bad. I love that this is a thing. Just grab it all the time and then just tech out whatever situation after it. This just seems like so fundamentally good.
Yeah. Also, I don't know how you feel about this Whisper, but the hidden opportunity, like the left side capstone talent, it feels a bit weak compared to keep it rolling in Greenskin. Like it seems good on the surface, especially if the second ambush, like the ambush proc, can proc a CTO. That seems good. But like it just doesn't seem like it's on the same power level as the other two.
Yeah, I agree with that.
You know, like I don't see even on single target, like it's hard. I mean, maybe. I mean, you just kind of go with what off the Sims say, but yeah. The other thing I would say too is if you look at the choice node max on Dreadblades between Dreadblades and Killing Spree,
Yeah.
because Dreadblades give CDR to it, like you get the Outlaw CDR on the ability Dreadblades itself, which you never used to get. I find it like very like I don't really think there was ever going to be a scenario where I'm going to take Killing Spree. Like and also Killing Spree is more comparable to Blade Rush, which is over on the left side of right
Yeah.
there. Those two abilities are on the same talent row right now, and they're more what you think of like your AOE, I guess, on Outlaw. But like Killing Spree would have to be tuned so insanely high to merit taking it over Dreadblades, and I also think Dreadblades is just like really fun. Like every single generator puts you max combo points, and then you finish instantly. Like it's pretty cool. So I don't.
The
You good?
so the yeah, so the other problem with Killing Spree is that the new talent that adds +3 to your Blade Flurry, that adds it to Blade Flurry, but the cleave from Killing Spree is specifically on the text of Killing Spree. It says while Blade Flurry is active, also hits 4 nearby enemies. So you don't actually
Oh yeah,
get
that's a
more
problem.
targets.
That's a problem. Yeah. I also tried a fun thing where like I would take Cold Blood and use Cold Blood with Killing Spree to try and make the whole thing crit and like do this big burst AoE. And Killing Spree is a bunch of instances of damage, so it only applies to like the first thing, kind of like Garrote or whatever. So it's basically like dog shit. Like it just doesn't work. So yeah, I'm a bit like I don't foresee
Huge
a future
cold
where
blood
you're
blade rush synergy. Very insane.
yeah.
Yeah, no, yeah, it needs a little help too. Also, what do you guys feel about the choice node on the left? Like, do you think there's other options that are potentially better than Sepsis and Ghostly Strike, or do you think that that makes sense?
I mean I love Bone Spike, how it plays for Outlaw. Like I definitely see Sepsis more of an assassination ability, and Bone Spike is like the premier Outlaw. Like it's just so fun, and it works so well. It plays so well. It's like a great replacement for Sinister Strike, and I don't know. Sepsis is just not. I think you played Night Fae for like a few months in Castle Nathria on single target only once. Like I don't know. I'm not the biggest fan.
I also just like
So-
that, like the one of the main changes you guys make in Mythic Plus is like you're making this dancing steel talent instead of being over on the left side of the tree. But it seems like you just have to give up so many points to get that, when otherwise your tree would actually look pretty similar.
Yeah. Also, that precise cuts ability, like the one that we didn't talent into there, that's actually a really good talent. I don't know exactly what you would drop for it, but because there's a lot of times in M plus where you're only hitting 2 targets or 3 targets.
It's also
and
way
so-
better with dancing steel, right?
Yeah, it's way better with Dancing Steel, assuming that they work together.
Yeah, I
Um,
bet they would.
Yeah, so I like you would definitely probably take that as well. I'd probably drop like you could drop. I guess in this build you might be able to drop the sleight of hand. It's yeah.
Well, you wouldn't be able to count the odds, right?
Oh,
So pathing-
actually,
Yeah, we don't have to
yeah.
worry about specifically about the
Yeah.
pathing stuff, because like I said, I think the pathing specifically is going to change a lot. It's just like basically the point of this is the pathing and going through the tree is a good way to actually talk about a lot of the things. It's not really trying to figure out a perfect build for something that's almost certainly going to be different. Yeah. So one thing you guys never really talked about is like what about this? Like you got the 1 point taken by surprise. Do you think hidden opportunity is just not good enough, and you'd rather see greenskins swapped with the blunderbuss?
Yeah, I mean, Greenskins is still like Greenskins is really good. It's just not like as gameplay altering or as fun as Blunderbuss. But it does kind of fit the like cleavy right hand side of the tree. But yeah, I don't think the hidden opportunity is good enough. I mean, maybe Whispyr has some other insights. It just doesn't seem good enough.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's just weak. But I think so we've kind of already talked about Ace Up Your Sleeve and how to get to Blade Flurry. Like it kind of sucks. But I have a really easy solution right now. Between the Eyes has a rank 2, which makes critical strikes deal 4 times the damage. Just bake it in. Free, right there. I think that just makes Ace Up Its Sleeve much better. If you just add that as an effect, or even just replace it.
Oh wait, they got rid of that completely?
Yeah, that rank 2 doesn't exist.
Oh man, that is so sad. Yeah, Max, on live right now, when you use Between the Eyes, if it crits, it does 4 times the damage. And yeah, I guess that's just gone, so that's good.
It might not be intended, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he said there's a lot of bugs and it's fixing soon, which means you guys are probably getting a build. That should be interesting. All right, let's leave Outlaw then. I would just say they might change a few things about Outlaw, but if either of you want to point out again, just like we did with Assassination, what does Outlaw look like in Dragonflight currently, barring a few certain changes? It seems like they'll at least be a little bit more consistent. They might have a fat-ass opener.
Yeah, I mean, I think
it looks fun.
It looks really fun. Also, you're going to get Grappling Hook and Shadow Step, which will be pretty fun.
Why'd you say Shadow Step like that?
Well, because I was about to say Shadow Dance, and then those two weren't
holy
what I
fuck.
was going for.
You fucking ripped a Shadow Step, and that got me off guard. Okay.
No,
it's bolded in his notes.
Yeah, I think it's gonna play great. I think it looks really fun. Excited for the new abilities, keep it rolling. And one thing about that I would say is a little bit different about Assassination, though, that we talked about is we kind of touched on every point for Assassination or where you could see it, but like some of these points on the Outlaw tree, like I don't know when you're ever taking these.
Good point.
Like,
yeah,
the reduced Grappling Hook CD, Blinding Powder, also Ambidextry is kind of mediocre, which is just below the Blade Flurry talent. Like it's all right, but Dirty Tricks is like basically a borderline waste of a point over there on the right side. The reduced Sap Gouge thing.
Reduced Sap, let's go.
Yeah.
Hell yeah. And then we talked about like loaded dice potentially being okay, or float like a butterfly potentially as like a tech damage reduction thing that you were considering, and those seems like they're in good spots. I think we pretty much covered everything else, other than don't really know about deeper stratagem in the class tree and having it available also in the spec tree, and I think everything else almost got covered or picked in some scenarios. Beautiful. All right, the last one, sub, going back to Whispyr. Single target raid sub rogue gaming.
Yeah, so for single target, you're going to want to go down the left side. And just off the rip, there's already 3 points you can start with, which is just crazy to me. But yeah, so you want to go take the backstab one, Weapon Master, and then into pre-med, Shadow Tech, Symbols. You're just crisscrossing down the left side, basically. But you're going to take the second charge of Dance, of course. So you can take Shadow Step. 2 charges Shadow Step, still good. You got to get to 8 points somehow, so Relentless Strikes is good.
Are you taking Relentless to get to Shadow Dance? Okay, and then you have 2 more.
Yeah, so Improved Shuriken Storm is like a Mythic Plus thing, and I guess it would be good in AoE.
Yeah,
but...
it would not even necessarily AoE, like even like a target swapping multiple, like burst AoE scenario on even a single target fight.
Yeah, it's a little. I mean, you have to take it in order to apply Find Weakness, which is kind of mandatory in order to do damage. So if you want to do AoE, you have to take Improved Storm into Black Powder. That's how you do AoE. Otherwise, you don't have an AoE finisher.
You know, you mentioned something that was really interesting. Are there any other classes in the game where their spec tree starts off with 3 choices?
Not to my knowledge.
Yeah, I think it's the only one in the game. I'm pretty sure almost every other one, top of my head, starts with 1. I think like every spec starts with 1. Weird. Okay, yeah, continue.
Yeah, that's always been weird to me. But yeah, so we need to put 2 points in somehow. So if you want an AoE finisher, take Black Powder. Otherwise, you take Shadow Focus and then just whatever you can, because the rest is all kind of utility-ish.
Sure, I'll just take Shot in the Dark and Shadow Focus. Although probably here, how about Shot in the Dark's bad? Just do Quick Decisions and Shadow Focus for now, and then we'll keep the AoE thing in mind for later.
Hell yeah. So now continuing down the zigzag of the left side, you're going to take Shadow Techniques, Symbols. This is your main cooldown every 30 seconds. Planned Execution as well. And then Inevitability. Inevitability is cool. I actually really like it. It's an old tier set. But I always thought it was sort of a nice little thing to add on top.
Oh, dude, 100%. Anything in the game that extends the duration of a cooldown or damage window by pressing buttons is good, like 100% of the time. It's always fun. It's never not fun.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, then there's that Vanish has 1 additional charge. I don't like it. It's kind of whatever. Vanish is just an extra Shadow Strike. So we're going to go down the middle now and take Shadow Blades. Deepening Shadows. Stiletto is good. And then Fade to Nothing is something that we take but don't want to.
Just a path, yeah.
Yeah. And so now we have 2 points left. And so now we have a little bit of a choice going on. So choice 1 are the 2 offshoots, the First Dance, and on the other side, Master of Shadows. So Master of Shadows is just an energy thing that helps you sustain through your dance. I mean, numbers-wise, it's okay. I think gameplay-wise, it's really good, though. First Dance is also kind of giga. So if you want to take those 2, those are cool. The other options would be, again, taking Cloaked in the Shadows, which is sort of a utility thing. Yeah, that one right there with the Vanish grants a shield. It's not really that great. Vanish 1 additional charge is also not really that great.
Yeah, they're both weak.
And then the other one that offshoots off of Shadow Dance, Veil Touched, that one's really strong, actually. Magic damage includes all the shadow damage that Subtlety does. So it can actually be a real contender for like just solid passive damage increase. And so you're kind of competing between Master of Shadows, First Dance, and Veil Touch, and you sort of have a choice between which ones of those you're taking.
Okay, sure. Let's do Veil Touched instead of Master of Shadows, instead of Cloaked in Shadows. Cloaked in Shadows and Without a Trace are probably the worst of the 3. So just these 3. Veil Touched and First Dance, sure. Okay.
Yep. And so now we're gonna continue our journey down the left side and just pick up those 4 points. Perforated Veins, Invigorating Shadow Dust, and the Rotten. So this is a Conduit, a Legendary, and another Legendary, and they're fine. I'm not excited about them, but I know some people really like them. Okay. Invigorating Shadow Dust does have the opportunity, though, to make that 1 extra charge of Vanish good.
Yep, definitely.
Then the middle we have Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow is just a increase. We love it.
Yep, straight up. Okay, sounds good. 20% damage increase.
Yep, banger. And now we're back to sort of having a choice. Lingering Shadow is insane because of how Perforated Veins works right next to it. 100% additional damage is Shadow. When Perforated Veins, it's the little fist.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so that makes your Shadow Strike increase your backstab damage by a ton. And then it increases it by a ton. You get out of Dance, and now it also increases it by a ton. And it's doing Shadow damage, which is magic damage, so that gets buffed by the magic damage thing.
Yep. Oh, so this seems sick.
Yeah, there's some Giga backstab thing going on, which in my opinion is kind of the wrong direction to take sub in. Sub for me has always been like huge burst dance windows.
Yep.
But in recent times it's been moving a lot towards like, oh well, now you have a Giga backstab at the end of your dance, and you have higher dance uptime, and now you're weaving dances in between symbols, and symbols is the thing that everything sort of molds around. So I don't really like the direction in general, but I do think that the Perforated Veins kind of stacking everything, that's a cool concept, right? Like that. Yeah. It's nice. And so now we're sort of at the bit again. Shadow Mist is terrible, by the way.
Yeah,
that's getting removed for sure.
Yeah, there's no way this can go. Gaining Stealth, Vanish, or Shadow Dance expels a Shadow Mist. When you walk through it, it refreshes Shadow Step, and you supercharge a combo point, and then, same thing with all supercharging of combo points. Yeah, that is... insane.
Echoing Reprimand, but worse somehow. Yeah, so we're back at the options sort of thing. We could take Sepsis, for example. That'd be cool. That's burst. You could take Gloomblade, but I think that going down the right side and grabbing Replicating Shadows might be okay, if only to get to the finisher damage afterwards. So that 40% damage on those 2 points from Eviscerate and Black Powder, you'd have to get rid of Sepsis, obviously, but that's sort of also been a core concept of sub for a long time, with the Find Weakness interaction of just now it does a ton of damage when you have Find Weakness on, and it's shadow damage, so it doesn't go, armor doesn't reduce it and all that stuff. The other option that you would have is you could cut the left side of the tree and then take Flag and Deeper Daggers and sort of do something in that regard. And really the whole thing that I don't like about this tree is, like, with Assassination, you saw, like, the left side is single target, the right side is Mythic Plus. On Outlaw, the left side was, like, ambush stuff, the right side was, like, Blade Flurry stuff.
Yeah.
With Sub, the tree mostly looks like a bunch of old tier sets, conduits, and legendaries just thrown at a dartboard, and whatever sticks. Like, it's a best of, and just it doesn't connect.
It has a little bit of, like, I think it's a little generally spread out like that, not necessarily the capstone level, but, like, very clearly the starting point with improved backstab on the left is single target oriented. The starting point of improved shuriken has that, like, left-right tech with all the shuriken and black powder nodes that are AoE, but as soon as you get into the middle, it definitely starts mixing all of it.
It gets really hard to sort of decide which one's going to be best. So we kind of have to just go off of, like, well, what's the feel? They changed Flag, by the way. Flag used to give haste. Now it gives mastery, which is a lot better of a stat for Sub. It increases finisher damage.
Okay.
So that's a buff. We like that. And then as you go down that chain, obviously, you get some more finisher interaction with finality.
Yeah, this is the stuff that I would like to see be good. Just the whole, like, shadow damage dealt, increased shadow damage. Shadow damage increased by 20%. Your nature and bleeds now do shadow. I love the idea of, like, the full shadow sub rogue. That sounds fucking dope. That sounds cool. I wish it was good. Is it good?
Oh, it is. I mean, a lot of those talents on the right side are really strong.
They're really good, and I don't know. It kind of depends, because it goes back to the whole, like, design philosophy that Sub has had. Because Sub has moved a lot towards more dances but less impactful. And so when you have more dances that are less impactful, this sort of, like, big bursty shadow damage, flag, mastery buffing, like that sort of thing, that's not really something that you want to lean into anymore, because the rest of it around it just isn't impactful, right? So the left side has a lot of the backstab and sort of uptime things that we've traditionally seen happen with Sub in the last kind of expansion or two. But yeah, those are sort of the two ideas that are floating around. You either go down the right or you go down the left. And then all the offshoots. The offshoots at the end are kind of questionable, in my opinion. So, like, Gloomblade at the top left.
Yep.
This is a backstab replacement that makes it do shadow damage and buffs it. Which, again, like, giant backstab, sure. But as an offshoot, it doesn't really get you to where you need to go. And obviously you see that you're a little bit point starved going into the bottom half.
Definitely. I was just about to mention that. Like, if you want this stuff at the bottom, you're not even getting 2 capstones, and you're already, like, out of things just to be able to path down this part of the tree.
Yeah, exactly. And so taking something like Gloomblade, when it's an offshoot dead end, might work mathematically, but it's not cool, it doesn't have that factor of like, I want this.
Yeah. All right, what else do we have? So what does a sub AoE look like?
Sub AoE is the left side of the tree, and that's basically it. So you would take
the right side?
The right side, my bad. So you take basically all the stuff you're taking on the right side currently, but you would cut some points from the left. So, like, premeditation, for example, it's slice and dice uptime, which is good. We like that, but it's a point that you might have to cut. Weapon Master, you could also sort of make the argument that not great. Silent Storm is really good. I like it. When you go into stealth, you put Find Weakness onto everything. That's good. That stops all of the uptime sort of stuff. Secret Technique, I have a lot of problems with. That's the offshoot from Silent Storm.
Okay.
So this thing, if you read it, it's a lot of text, but essentially you press the button, it does physical damage, and then it does a little bit less physical damage to everything around it, but the cooldown gets reduced when you spend combo points. So a lot of people like this because it breaks up the monotony of storm, powder, over and over and over and over, because that's your AoE rotation. The issue that Secret Technique has always had, though, is that it's physical damage and doesn't interact with anything. So the Shadowed Finisher stuff that makes Black Powder do extra shadow damage,
Yeah.
that doesn't work with Secret Technique. So eventually it just kind of gets left in the dust by a lot of other talents interacting with Black Powder instead of Secret Technique. Tornado and Flag, by the way, I think are must picks. Those 2 points work so well together. And it just lets you stack the flag up tremendously fast. But I know a lot of people don't like the gameplay because it feels like you have a dead GCD and then you can't control the storms. But that's a topic for another day. And then, yeah, now you're at 4 points left, and now you have choices on what you can take again, which I think at this part in the tree, it's the same thing as the Assassination tree, where you're like, I have a lot of options and I don't know which one's good. Like, I want them all.
Yeah.
Which is really good. So like Planned Execution, for example, the 2-pointer that comes after symbols, crit strike chance during Symbols of Death, that increases, all your crit. Crit gives you Find Weakness. Like, that's good. That's good damage.
Oh, yeah.
Now this one is Backstab and Shadow Strike. We probably don't want that, but now you're looking at Dark Shadow in the middle path, and Dark Shadow Dance, additional damage, Pog.
Yeah, I think you always want that. Yeah.
And so now, yeah, we're back to backstab nonsense. So now we're looking at like, okay, well, do we want some more single target? Do we take Weapon Master? Do we want first dance for some extra combo points when we go into dance? In AoE, obviously, you generate a lot more combo points because Shuriken Storm fills your combo points basically every time. So you have more access to dances, which means you have more first dance combo points coming in. Obviously, tuning will determine where this last point goes. But you kind of don't have anything for, I want more AoE, how do I get more AoE? Which I think is a bit of a problem.
Yeah.
But I think this whole tree just has to change in general. So I'm not really too concerned.
Yeah, I think it's gonna, especially because like the pathing seems a little outdated. There's definitely like this thing, the like random offshoots, like 4 of them. Like it's symmetrical, and that's probably why I was put in, but it doesn't really fit with like a lot of the other trees have been changed. So I imagine that'll look a little bit different. But I think it definitely looks like sub will be fun though. I don't know. Like I mean, I guess I'll kind of end this with allowing both of you to talk about it, including James. That like what does sub look like next expansion compared to what it is now?
Well, I think it'll play quite a bit differently in single target because a lot of sub rogue in single target right now is based on playing Kyrian with the Kyrian legendary, and it's hard to say whether or not you'll have the same dance uptime as you do right now. But that aside, I think from an AoE standpoint, like it looks pretty fun. I like some of the thematic changes that they've done, moving things more towards the shadowy end, but also even on the single target side, like inevitability is kind of a new thing, so that's kind of exciting. We never really played with the Rotten, so that could be kind of interesting. For me, I think the biggest thing that I would really like to see is if Secret Technique just did pure shadow damage. I think it would make way more sense, and it would make the sub-rogue AoE rotation much more enjoyable, because that is my one gripe with the spec, is that like single target super fun, even like 2-3 target is pretty fun, but like the AoE is just so boring.
Dude,
so
I feel like Secret Technique being shadow sounds like a slam dunk. Like I don't know why they wouldn't make like that. Seems like it's just gonna happen.
And then the other thing is that's going to be kind of unique is because you can take deeper stratagem in this tree and you have it in the other tree, you would be generating 7 combo points every single time that you did like in M+, and then it would increase your damage by a lot to be able to go, instead of from going 0 to 6 and then using a finisher, to go to 7, assuming that you're doing bigger pulls. Like that's kind of exciting because that's brand new. Like I don't think that's ever been in the history of WoW, so that's pretty cool. But yeah, I do think it's a little bit sort of convoluted because you like a bunch of the talents on the right side, you like a bunch of talents on the left side. You don't even really have enough points to get 2 capstones. So there is quite a few changes that probably need to happen. But one other thing is, right now, you have to take Fade to Nothing before you take Dark Shadow, which is that one that increases your move speed and stealth.
Yeah. Yeah.
By and large, this thing is really bad. Like it just feels bad. But the one next to it, Cloaked in Shadows, I think this one would actually be really cool because if there was a big thing coming up, like you could vanish for like a 30% shield, and I feel like the gameplay would be like 10 times better than like just this move speed thing with Fade to Nothing.
I think you wouldn't have either of them. Like having that in
Well,
this line doesn't really make sense.
I mean, yeah, having to take one is not great, but like if you were forced into a utility option, that Cloaked in Shadow one sounds much better.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they're getting funnel. I guess there's like I feel like flag funnel is gonna be pretty real. Like,
But yeah, flag funnel, and with 7 combo points, it should be.
yeah,
it
you
should be nuts,
you
right?
should be fucking cranking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's nice. All right, cool. Any other final words on Sub Whispyr?
Yeah, I mean, the subtree is just not good. I know that a lot of people just don't like a lot of the stuff on here and don't like how the pathing works, and just the play style of backstabbing is just not great. I also know that a lot of people hate just First Dance and hate Master of Shadows, power-wise or not, you know, but it needs a lot of work, and right now it's just kind of a mash of old effects that just get reused and thrown onto a talent tree. Just call it a day. So I think that like the sub needs a lot of work right now, and that's all I really have to say. It's just not good.
I do think the spec is missing a little bit of an identity, because if you think about sub and you have this big burst window in your dance, and it's just not really what it used to be anymore.
Also, the only new talent they got is that Shadow Mist thing and the backstab thing in the middle. Like those two at the bottom are the only new nodes that sub's gotten.
I feel like you're gonna get something new in Shadow Mist, though. I feel like whatever this middle capstone is, and assuming it's gonna keep in line with the shadowy kind of bit with this whole line, every single one of these icons is purple as fuck. I feel like this could be really cool, whatever it is. There's like a lot of lines they could go. Even like a CDR like anger management thing with Shadow Dance kind of fits in the line that could be something.
Well, Shadow Dance already has CDR, right?
Oh yeah. Okay, beautiful. I think that's about it. Don't want to keep it too long, so it's at least digestible, even though he was here for it. So, do you guys have any final takes on Rogues before we peace out?
I think there's a lot of cool new stuff. I think it'll be exciting to test it all out and be interesting to see where it lands. I'm excited for the raid utility. Excited for some of the playstyle changes, like with Keep It Rolling and Kingsbane, stuff like that. Needs a little bit of work, but I think it's in a good spot.
Sure. All right, let's get it. Thanks for showing up, guys. I'm gonna head out. Thanks for coming on Whispyr on short notice.
Yeah, my pleasure, man. Anytime.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yep. See you, boys. See you, James.
See you.
I'm just gonna call Whispyr real quick, actually, before moving on to Hunters. What's up, dude?
Hey.
Hey, so since we talked yesterday, one change they made, the Dance Macabre, so they removed this. This is actually 1 minute after we stopped our conversation last night, which I thought was hilarious. So they changed Shadow Mist to be Dance Macabre, which is basically, people were thinking it's hit combo. I believe it's actually totally different, right? It's anytime you spend any ability ever for a second time, it'll reset and then start building again, right?
Correct. So it can work like hit combo, right? In the way where you just kind of, do your regular kind of strike, eviscerate thing. You really sort of, the intention is that you weave in a bunch of different abilities and it sort of stacks up the bonus, right? And it is unique abilities cast, like you said, to where you want to have this sort of, okay, well, I'm going to cast abilities that I don't normally cast in order to buff abilities later in the dance. Which I think is interesting, but we'll have to see how it plays out, because right now it's just 10%. So the question becomes, do I want to use a bad ability for 10% damage on a better ability? And that's not really compelling.
Yeah, like think about this. Like if you're building up, I'm assuming, I actually have not played sub in a long time, but in Shadow Dance, is still the majority of your damage coming from huge finishers within your Shadow Dance?
I mean, it's mostly coming from the combination of strike being much better than backstab,
Okay.
and then eviscerate just being good.
Okay, so if it's on multiple abilities, I could see it making sense that it keeps stacking up. It's just that a lot of times when you're pressing an ability just to get an extra 10% right before you press ability that does a bunch of damage, if you just send that ability and start building that up again, a lot of times you're just getting in more damage instead of having one particular attack that hits way, way harder. So I just think it's going to be weird for them to balance it, and I don't know if it sounds even that fun to play. Like, there are things like this that, like, massively change your... Like, Weapons of Order for Monk is a good one, where, like, Weapons of Order, like, actually, like, when it's up, it's not like a normal cooldown. Like, you kind of just, like, play it a little bit differently. Things are off cooldown faster. It's really fast-paced. I think that's, like, kind of their idea with this. Not to be like Weapons of Order, but that it's supposed to just kind of shake up Shadow Dance, and I don't know if it's actually going to really play that well.
Yeah, so I think that, in general, that feedback is sort of where I'm headed as well, where I'm mostly leaning no, right? Like, I think it could be interesting. I think it has potential. But the way it is right now, I'm leaning towards that it's probably just going to be something passive, and you just kind of let it happen as a damage increase, but the gameplay is not is not quite there yet. Something that Reels actually clarified yesterday, because obviously in the Discord the chat was exploding. Something he clarified is that the wording on it is a little bit vague. But the way that he wants it to work right now is it's just 10% damage flat, and the first cast of the ability adds another 10%. So basically, you can read it as if you do nothing and just use your rotation normally, you're always going to be at 20%, which
you're gonna be
kind of Dark Shadow.
Well, you're gonna always be at 10%, and then for your first, like, until you break the combo for the first time, you'll have an extra thing added. But once you reset your combo and start again, you're gonna go back to just the initial 10, right?
No, the combo resetting, when you cast the ability, it puts you at 1 stack, so you're instantly back at 20.
Okay, that's cool. Very cool. That's just a powerful thing. I don't know if it changes anything about the design, but it just makes it more powerful. Okay.
It basically just plugs us back into do the rotation as normal, and then you're like...
You get a damage bonus. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's definitely better than any kind of, like, super weird degen shit, so... Beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
And then today they did a much bigger post where they kind of just showed, like, an idea for the new class tree, but they really did not make a lot of changes. And I don't know how hard we want to go on this, because they did say that they're going to be doing a bunch in the next few builds. They're going to do a bunch more things. But basically, the main things, just they moved. They didn't really delete improved sap. So, like, improved sap is still there. They made that node actually much better, but it's still just. And this is a problem with another thing, I guess, is this was my takeaway, and I want to hear yours on this. You still, to get Shadow Dance, there's no other connections anywhere. You have to spend 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. It's 9 points down in a line with absolutely zero choice if you want Shadow Dance. If you want Thistletty, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 points on there. If you want Echoing Reprimand, it's 8 points slammed down from the middle. And I believe it's actually the only class tree in the entire game where if you look at a line from where the Shadow Step, Sprint, and the other node on the left is, and then ending where the Leeching Poison and the thing where Cheat Death used to be is, that whole thing of that entire middle section not connecting, there's nothing like that in any other tree. And I think the biggest issue with them changing Improved Sap to be something a lot better, especially in a PvP environment, still just feels bad because there's no way around it even if you don't want it, right?
I think that's sort of the general feel that I have from looking at the tree a little bit. I've sort of, like, looked at it for a little bit, let it settle in, but I think that this is generally a step in the right direction, but it's just nowhere near enough. Like, all the changes in of themselves are fine, right? Like, changing Improved Sap, it's now healing, reduced damage and healing, which is... Sure, it's like a PvP talent now, right? But, you know, moving Cheat Death is good. We like that. Having the choice node of deeper strat, we like that. It all makes sense. But at the end of the day, the stuff you brought up with Dance still being too powerful and being just a straight shot, Thistletty being a straight shot, ER being a straight shot, all those things still exist. And so... I think that this has to be the first change of many if we want a good tree.
Yeah.
but at face value, it's a step back in the right direction, whereas the last change was a step in the wrong direction.
Yeah, like even like cheat things. They moved cheat up closer in the tree as a choice node with elusiveness, which makes sense. Also a very powerful ability. But even if you look at it like this, right? To get elusiveness, when you're slamming, let's say you want to slam down the left or slam down the right, you're having to select a reduction on sprint to get cheat. It's like you may not necessarily want that, right? So like the whole, like every decision you make in every tree that's been identified as a problem and fixed is I have to take this thing that has very little relevance to get this thing that I always want. And they've kind of routinely fixed every interaction like that. But the rogue tree alone, just from the fundamental issue of unable to ever move from the left side of the tree to the right side of the tree, or from the middle to the right, or from the middle to the left, that alone causes so many of those problems to feel like they're bigger than they are, because just a simple pathing and like connecting thing will just kind of solve all those issues in general. Because we don't necessarily want improved sap. You could still get down to Shadow Dance by taking cheat instead and still going back over to the right. I really think I think this tree would have like so many less issues if they just made that one change.
Yeah. In a tree that I sort of came up with, I actually put points under what is it? Iron Stomach and Prey on the Weak, like the holes next to where the new cheat death is.
Yeah.
Right? Those holes, I put talents underneath those and then had connectors going both sides. And I feel like that was kind of it helped free up that sort of utility bloat at the top and allowing you to go where you needed to go. It wasn't perfect, obviously, but I feel like having something there that just lets you travel from left to right is just already just a huge up.
Yep. And then they made... So let's see. They made deeper strategy. What do you feel about again, you haven't had a lot of time to like sit there and digest this, but just a quick reaction to making deeper stratagem and Mark for Death a choice node and off the beaten path rather than on the main highway, as they put it.
I mean, it's fine. I think that on paper, just conceptually, is that Marked for Death is sort of the snap take on that one. The one place where I see deeper stratagem having big value is Subtlety AoE, where you're actually just overcapping combo points all the time. But for the other two specs, I think it's just kind of a choice node between Marked for Death or you don't take it. Which is, a little bit disappointing. Maybe they buff deeper, I don't know. But it's fine. I mean, if you turn deeper back into like a big throughput node with increased finisher damage like it was in the past, then the choice is a little bit closer because Marked for Death gives you more finishers, deeper gives you stronger finishers. I think that's a compelling choice. But yeah, this change is kind of whatever.
Let's see. Forget about okay, so yeah. And then another thing, they just removed the 3-point nodes. Not anything, they worded it a little bit differently, but like I think it was, when we said this yesterday, it was obvious that 3-point nodes are being removed, so it's definitely gonna be interesting to see what they do with the Assassination tree as well. But they basically took those out to make those other abilities a little bit more accessible, even though there's still really no other way to path in the bottom of the tree. You're still kind of locked in. And then the last thing, so they are making Resounding, I'm interested in what you think about Resounding Clarity being a 1-pointer, and now it causes Echoing Reprimand to Anima Charge 3 combo points.
So that's what it kind of is on live.
Yeah.
With the legendary, but it doesn't. Again, it's a step in the right direction, but it doesn't solve the underlying issue, right? So Resounding Clarity being 1 point means that ER is like objectively stronger now, right? It's 2 points instead of 3 for the full effect, and the full effect is stronger. On paper, that's great because we need something to compete with Dance. But you're still, like you mentioned at the start, you're still locked into having to take 8 goddamn points to get there. So at the end of the day, you're not really, like, you're not feeling the weight of Echoing Reprimands being better because you're still having to invest a third of your tree into getting it.
Yeah, dude, it can be solved in so many ways too. It doesn't even have to be like fixing that. It could be here, let me post this here. Copy image. Like let me share my screen. Like even if you wanted to have like the middle to be more restrictive for some particular reason, you're just like, okay, middle is what I want to be super restrictive. You could just do this where you could have the yellow lines be like down here. You could have like this.
Yeah.
Or like this, right? So at least
you could do that.
so just this alone in the bottom solves all the stuff at the top. Now what I was suggesting earlier is like finding something to do with like these two talents and just finding a way to have like this connect to here and then this do this, right? And then that way it's like but you don't have to do both of these things. You only need to do one. But like I think alone that will solve it to where like you don't have to send it down the middle to get Echoing Reprimand. It's actually like an okay choice. You don't have to slam all of your points at the top of the tree.
Yep, that is a really quick and easy solution. I agree. Those connectors at the bottom could basically solve a lot of the choices. But the one issue that I see with doing that at the bottom with those connectors is you still don't have that great of a mobility going from left to right or right to left. You just have mobility going from like
center,
the right to the middle, right? So I feel like that might force people into taking Echoing Reprimand when they don't want to, because they're like, oh well, there's points left over, and I might
yeah, exactly. I might want to go Thistletea and Shadow Dance or whatever, but the only realistic thing is for me to go from, you know, here to the middle, and there's no way to go to the right, unless of course the middle path becomes much more attractive, which I guess it will kind of be now, because it like has that verse node, and then it has the cheat death. Like if you compare like the power level of these these three lines, right? You have like this line, and this line. And now what before it was competing with was sap, this other thing on the left, and then the thing in the middle. And now the thing in the middle is cheat or elusiveness. That's an infinitely more valuable point than any of those other two, right? So it's actually a much more feasible that you do end up going down the middle, I think. Especially because you just gained points in your tree by removing 3-pointers, right? So I think it's very possible. Yeah. Well, it'll be fun to play around with this next week. I think they're close. They just need to fix that. All right. Do you have any other notes about today?
Yeah. So there was something you actually mentioned yesterday about like the same rows being the same sort of idea, right?
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that I thought was that that isn't actually true for that Vigor row. So the row under the bloated middle, Acro Strike is complete utility.
Yep.
And so what ends up happening is the middle is still just like not equal, because you have the middle being the top row of like defensives across the top, and you're like, cool, but one of them's cheat, so it's just better. And then in the middle you have a bunch of defensives and, you know, a bit of a bunch of offensive stuff, but the 4% versatility doesn't connect, right? So you have these offshoots. So technically you're getting more value just from the connectors compared to versatility.
Yeah.
And then you go down another row and you're back to, okay, well, offensive, utility, offensive. So it's still not comparable. And now you're forced into like, okay, well, I want to go down the middle for cheat death, but I'm going down the middle for my defensive and my utility rather than I'm going down the middle because I want to, right? You feel like you're forced into cheat death, and that's forcing your decision down the middle rather than like an active decision that you're making because you want the stuff in the middle.
Got to increase pathing from left to right somehow. I mean, like just to give you an idea, I'm actually gonna put, just to give them their best chance here, I'm just gonna put the new rogue tree up, which is a improved version of this old one, but I'm just gonna bring up other trees. I'm just gonna scroll through them at a time. Look at this. You see this connecting from left to right thing? It doesn't have to be right all the way to the left, but even going from demonic gateway to strength of will to accrued vitality in a lot of cases is enough of like flexibility to where you end up getting what you want. If you go to really any new tree looks like this, even like the remade fire one, or the remade mage tree, it all has this interconnected left to right. Just every class tree has the ability. Well, this one does it a little bit differently because it just starts basically brand new in the second thing and lets you start from tip to scales, and that easily lets you go from left to right. But, like, there's different ways of accomplishing it. But, like, kind of every tree allows you to do this. I just wish they. I wish the rogues just got this treatment, and you would instantly see so many more possibilities, way less bad feelings of taking talents. That's it. That's my whole. Sorry, I've been ranting about this for like 30 minutes. I don't know why it's making me so upset because I just feel like it's so obvious. But
Yeah.
Beautiful. All right, that's all I needed you for. You got any last words about rogues?
No. Thanks for the fix. Please more.
Yep. Beautiful. All right, thanks for the talk, dude.
Yeah. Anytime.
Yep. All right, see ya.